Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this opening session. My name is Eddie Adams. I have the happy task of moderating this high-level opening session of what is in fact the first ever OECD Local Skills Week. As all of us know, the labour markets are fast changing, and with them jobs and skills putting huge demand on our abilities to keep pace of things, driven by mega trends like the green and digital revolutions that we see around us. And in the next few days, our focus is going to be on the role of local and regional governments, which are really in the front line, supporting job seekers, employers, workers, as we manage this big transition that we're going through. On the one hand, local governments, of course, are closest to people, and the first port of call quite often if citizens are struggling to keep their skills up to date or to keep in the labour market. They're also very often on speed dial for employers who are looking to get the right fit and the right skill set for their businesses. And at the same time, communities are the places where we see dynamic innovation, entrepreneurship, very often supported by public sector agencies as influencers like Mariana Mazzucato very helpfully remind us. And in this context, the OECD Local Skills Week brings together experts, local policymakers, practitioners to explore the challenges and the opportunities ahead, which are actually around us now. This is not a future conversation. We see this every day. The overall event is organized by the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Cities and Regions, in cooperation with the Morgan Chase Foundation, the City of Barcelona, and also with Eurocities. This opening session will be followed straight after by a session we bring together businesses and labour representatives to dig more deeply into the question of the future of work. But before we get started, you'll notice we're not in Barcelona today, sadly, because here we are 2 years later, and because of the impact of the pandemic, we are still online, and we're learning how to do this much more effectively, but there are still limitations, obviously, and we miss that human connection. But we're all getting used to this. But let me just say a few words about how we're going to do things in the coming days with this event. The most important thing to say is we have almost 2,000 delegates from all over the world joining us, a huge reservoir of skills, talent, and knowledge and expertise, and we would really like you to play an active role in this event. This is not an event where you're going to sit and just listen to things as it washes over you. We want you to use the Q&A function, the chat bar, the various tools you can see on your screen to join the discussion, make comments, share material, ask questions. We'll be keeping an eye on those and bringing them into the conversation as much as possible. And there's also an opportunity to use a language channel. This session is in Spanish and in English. So again, feel free to use the medium of your choice to make the most active inputs to this session. So, are cities ready for the future of work? Let's find out. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite Lamia Kamal Shawwe, the OECD's Director of Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Skills, to get us started. Lamia, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Distinguished guests, dear all, welcome. Welcome to the OECD Local Skills Week. Our theme is future-proofing local skills systems. This is really a timely subject. We are indeed living through a crisis that has changed the way we live and work, perhaps forever. Some of the pandemic's deepest impact have been felt in the labor market, and it may not obvious at first glance. Employment rates across the OECD have nearly recovered to pre-pandemic levels. More specifically, unemployment in the Eurozone fell to a record low of 7% at the end of last year. And in January, the US added more than 460,000 new jobs with unemployment at 4%. So this is really great news after so much suffering. But there is a but. the labor market is deeply imbalanced. People are struggling to find jobs while many businesses have difficulty recruiting. In some countries, workers are demanding more from their employers and voting with their feet in what has been called the Great Resignation, and global mega trends are pushing firms and workers automate, go digital, and go green. So the world of work has changed, and the skills needed in the wake of the crisis will not necessarily be the same as before. And more than ever, we will find that needs will differ across places. And for that, we need to come together to understand these changes and develop the new policy and partnerships to adapt. This is why we are gathering together today, and I'm pleased to open this event with our key partners in the local skills journey. First, Mrs. Vanessa Angel, Executive Director of Global Philanthropy at JP Morgan. Thank you very much for being with us, Mrs. Angel. We are also very grateful to the JP Morgan Chase Foundation for supporting our work on adult learning over the past 2 years. I'm also pleased to welcome Mr. Paolo Solanilla, Commissioner for City Promotion in Barcelona. And I would like to thank the Barcelona City for supporting the Local Skills Week. Barcelona is a global leader when it comes to local skills policy, and we look forward to visiting your beautiful city once again and drawing inspiration from your work in person once the pandemic is over. So the OECD has long recognized the crucial role played by cities like Barcelona in developing local skills. Our local employment and economic development program, the LEAD program, was created in response to a previous job crisis in 1982. And this year, we celebrate its 40th anniversary. We celebrate 40 years of standing by local partners to develop policies for the future of work, 40 years in which we have undertaken around 30 reviews on local job creation in countries and regions across the world, 14 years of bringing policymakers and practitioners together, including through the OECD Local Development Forum, which brings together thousands of local development practitioners, entrepreneurs, and social innovators from 65 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, labor markets do not stand still. They continually adapt to local, national, and global trends. So must our policies. Take automation. Our initial estimates suggest that around 14% of jobs are likely to disappear across the OECD in the next 15 to 20 years. Another 32% will significantly change. The pandemic is likely to accelerate these trends. Older workers are withdrawing from the labor market earlier than anticipated, and younger workers are reevaluating their career choices, leaving gaps in many sectors. And firms can and probably will seek to fill these gaps through accelerated automation. The green transition is also prompting a rethink. Emissions intensive industry needs to be managed down and managed out. And at the same time, around $63 trillion of annual investment is needed until 2030 in energy, transport, water, and telecommunication. And this will require huge investment in the skills needed to make it happen. Cities and regions are experiencing this change in different ways. Job losses may be concentrated in some region, for instance, due to a large share of employment in so-called brown or declining industries, while other regions will and create new jobs. In both cases, new skill sets will be required. So to help meet this need, today we are launching an OECD policy manual on future-proofing adult learning system in cities and regions. This is a very long title. We are doing that in partnership with the JP Morgan Chase Foundation and Eurocities. And actually, I just got the paper copy on my table. And let me highlight three key themes from the report that cities and local governments need to address to create strong local skills ecosystem. The first is ensuring that adult learning systems reach those who need it the most. Today, unfortunately, only 1/3 of workers whose jobs are at a high risk of automation participate in adult learning. We need new ways to encourage participation and new ways to connect with the vulnerable population, such as through the social economy. And take, for example, the Bridge project in Rotterdam, a great project, which provides career guidance, mentoring, and career start guarantees in the green and the digital economy. They provide that to young people in one of the Netherlands' most deprived neighborhoods. Second, we need to ensure that the local learning offer matches employers' needs. Skill mismatch are widespread, even in cities with a highly educated workforce. And for example, in Stockholm, where over 20% of workers are underqualified and more than 15% of workers are overqualified. To address this, we need better data, but also better connections with employers to design the learning offer. Third, we need skill systems that are joined up and easy to navigate. Today, skill systems remain extremely complex and fragmented between providers, sectors, and levels of governments. We need stronger relationship among local governments, employers, learning and training providers, and social partners, as well, of course, coordination across levels of government. And one example here is in Austria, where labor foundations bring together all these actors to support companies with retraining staff who are at risk of redundancy. So dear all, the world of work is changing. We must change it with it. And I look forward to hearing to our excellent speakers in the coming days about how we can do so and, of course, generate a brighter future for workers in all places. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamia. Great. That's really helpful in terms of setting the scene. Lots of key words in there that I'm sure we'll be picking up in our discussions in the coming days. And let's move on now to, you mentioned Vanessa and the role of JP Morgan Chase Foundation. So Vanessa, can I bring you in here again, just maybe to complement some of the words there from Lamia. And I've been reading this week about some of the programs you're involved in, like the Advancing Cities program, which is being extended to Paris. So you're very actively involved in this bigger conversation. So maybe just add a few words, if you would, to get us started. Thank you.
Of course, thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Lamia. And to say it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you today and to think about all those challenges that we are facing around skills, and especially for the most vulnerable one in society. So I think you, Lamia and Eddie, you both alluded to it. We are going through major changes with the pandemic, digitalization of the economy, the transition to low carbon economy. So job profiles and skills needs are changing ever more rapidly at the moment. And our concern is that there's a huge risk that lower skilled workers are being left behind because they're less likely potentially to participate in training, receive career guidance. So this is clearly a very challenging time, but we know challenging times are also good time to bring change, and we want to see how we can use these headwinds to really be a catalyst for a longer term sustainable change. And you mentioned it, but JP Morgan Chase has been committed to building a more inclusive economy, and we leverage the full force of the firm in doing so. So building on the expertise, the philanthropic capital, the data, and the business initiatives. And skills obviously is a big part of that economic inclusion, and we're doing it at the local level in France through our Advancing Cities program that you mentioned, Eddie. And at the end of 2018, the bank announced a large commitment of $30 million over 5 years to bring underserved residents of Greater Paris closer to the economic opportunity of the territory. And the program has been really focused more specifically on Seine-Saint-Denis, which is a department northeast of Paris, with the choice of Seine-Saint-Denis being based on a place that has high social needs, but also present a lot of opportunities. It's a very young department, the youngest one in metropolitan France. It's a very diverse population. And there are huge investments taking place that are going to take place over the next 10 years in Seine-Saint-Denis through the Olympic Games, the Grand Paris Express as well. And these will create, booming opportunities for jobs. And in this special moment of time, we want to see how we can contribute to make sure that these opportunities benefit are more widely shared among the vulnerable inhabitants of Greater Paris and more specifically Seine-Saint-Denis. So today I just wanted to highlight maybe a few examples of our local approach with our Advancing Cities program in France. And very logically, I think we started with data because data is essential to drive common efforts. So we partnered with a research institute called Institut Montaigne to do really a diagnosis of the territory and the barriers that are faced more specifically by the inhabitants of Seine-Saint-Denis. And I think we did it very closely with the local actors from the start. And based on those initial exploration, I think we chose a few big bets to to invest in, and we focused on promoting pathways to opportunities that we thought were more promising for local residents. So apprenticeships for young people, digital upskilling, and programs to boost employability of underserved adults through the work integration sector in France. So, and for all of that, we've been able to rely on an amazing network of nonprofit organizations that really combine local presence, very specific outreach strategies, and innovative practices. So maybe looking at our approach as a corporate foundation, I think we focused on a few key principles. One of them is building collaboration because, we know as with any complex problem that each actor will have a piece of the solution. So, we partner with local nonprofit organizations, national, regional, local public institutions, and business leaders to really join forces and leverage existing resources. And we also encourage our nonprofit partners to do the same, build up strong relationship between them, build up strong relationship with employers, and we facilitate exchange of learning through peer exchange sessions. The second principle is always looking for or try to look for solutions that are scalable. So a quick example would be we helped one of our partners, Social Builder, set up a big digital program for women in Seine-Saint-Denis, which is called Women in Digital, with a mix of raising awareness through a chatbot, boot camps, and more in-depth training. And we were very pleased to see that this program was awarded additional funding through the French skills investment plan, which will enable the scale up. So that's always an important aspect when you're funding a program. And also in terms of, we're also looking for ways to really build the capacity of the sector. I mean, we're very conscious that in order to most effectively empower particularly vulnerable groups, you need to strengthen organizations that are deeply rooted in their community. So, for example, we've been working for a long time with an organization called ARES, which is a work integration structure. And part of our support has specifically been channeled to ensure that ARES is also sharing their expertise and supporting the creation and development of other work integration companies on the territory in Greater Paris, and also sharing the network that they have with local employers, as this is a key aspect to any job placement opportunities. So the last point maybe to mention is obviously we're also trying to learn from our own experience as an employer, and we put in place a few mentoring programs specifically in France around young people from Seine-Saint-Denis to offer career exploration, career guidance, and skills building. And obviously using the employee of the bank to provide these mentoring activities. So I know time is of the essence, so just really, really important to see a forum like this. I know how essential it is to share learnings and build further collaboration. So I wish you all a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Nice overview there of the many, many, many things going on. There's a busy, busy space, and over the coming days, we'll have a chance to dive more deeply into some of the themes we're already picking up on this whole bit. The question about foresighting, use of data, this how we get innovative, new, fresh ways of reaching out to the most vulnerable citizens and so most disconnected from the labour market. We need to try new things. So in the coming days, we'll have a chance to really explore some of these experiences from the ground upwards. Looking forward to that. But let's keep moving just now. Let's shift to Barcelona. Let's bring in our colleague Pau Solania. Pau, great to see you. You have I imagine it must be a fabulous job being the Barcelona Commissioner for City Promotion. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to Barcelona for supporting this event. I'd be interested to know why this whole question of the future of work matters so much to a city like yours. I'd maybe be interested to hear your thoughts on that just to get us started. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eddie, and also to Lani and Vanessa, spoke before, and the rest of the colleagues. First of all, thanks for the invitation. Pleased to support the activity and the wish to host you, most of these 2,000 delegates, to host you some point in Barcelona in the near future. So my pleasure. So I would like to share with you 5 comments, very concrete, and to help a little bit to push the discussion. The first, answering your question about Barcelona, how important it is to tackle, to face this debate of the future of work. So first about the context. Then 2 comments about diagnosis, and 2 more comments about possible answers that we are exploring in Barcelona. First, the concept. Just to make it a map of what is the challenge that we have in front of us regarding the future of work. So it's obvious that we are in a digitalization, a digital transformation, and now in a climate urgency, and so on. But just to make you a picture of the challenge that a city like Barcelona, an open, a plural, diverse, and international city. In the year 2000, our population was 3% of our population were foreigners. Today, 22, we have 23% of our population are foreigners. So the first thing is the cities are changing and are changing very fast. So we need to tackle this. So they are very plural, very international, with many languages, many cultures, many different ways of doing and expectations and emotions. Secondly, the world is misconfigured. Any certainty of the past, any success of the past, guarantee any success neither in the present or even in the especially in the future. So we need to reinvent ourselves. So we have lessons to learn, but not necessarily we have a clear method how to proceed. What we know is that our cities, it needs to be competitive, sustainable, and equitable. So these are the 3 pillars of a city like Barcelona, what we call our Green Deal, Barcelona Green Deal agenda: competitiveness, sustainability, equitable city. So how we do that? Then 2 major problems that we have. The first, that we need to rebuild, we need to create new coherencies, to build up new realities, because things are changing very fast. There are new ways of creating value, and therefore employment, jobs in a new way, that they live together with traditional ones. So there are new realities with traditional ones, and not necessarily they live together very, very well. There is a huge diversity of forms of work, of labor relations, plurality of labor relations. There is a great professional mobility. There is what we call a radical flexibility. So we are in the economy on demand. You can get what you want, wherever you want, at the time that you want. So this flexibility makes that many companies, or most of the companies, are addicted to flexibility. They want workers when they have the peak of work, and they don't need the workers when this goes to a valet time. So how to conciliate this with a normal labor life? So this is a flexibility, adaptability is one of the first problems we have to face. Second diagnosis or challenges, the emerging of the digital economy. It's concentrating productivity in a few hands. So what we call in digital economy, the winner takes all. So big companies in a few hands, and what about the others? Who takes care about the others? So an increase of polarization, of job polarization, high specialization with very well-paid people, and low skilled labor, poorly paid. So, and this creates serious problems in our cities. So there is a fragmentation of the working lives and a fragmentation of earnings. And therefore, how to assure security in a world of uncertainties. This is the main challenge that we're facing. So what can we do? Even knowing that this is very complex, but in just a couple of minutes to answer maybe two ideas of what we are doing in Barcelona and regarding to skills. First, in the 21st century, talent is the new oil. Talent is the new oil. If the talent is the new oil, we have to invest in skills. Massively investment in skills. Because talent is a critical factor for competitiveness that we were talking before. Right? So if you don't have talent, the companies do not come to your city. Before, workers used to go where the companies were. Today, the companies invest in the cities, in the territories where there is talent. So talent is a critical factor for competitiveness, for sustainability, for equality in a city. So talent, massive investment in skills. Because talent is distributed in the world, but opportunities are not necessarily distributed the same way in the world. So there is a concentration. There are certain regions, certain cities, there is a huge competence where this talent is going to be concentrated. Hopefully, and luckily, Barcelona is one of these cities. To do so, to be a city of talent and to invest in skills, you need public leadership and collaborate, and public and private cooperation. Public leadership and public and private cooperation. To invest, as I was saying before, massively in skills. To do so, we need reskilling and upskilling. Our traditional educational systems are not ready to provide, to answer the needs of the labor market. This flexibility, this speed of the changes in the labor market makes that cities, we need to be in the front of employability. We have to shift the cities only from training places to a learning communities. Our cities has to become learning communities. What we used to say a few years ago, the long life learning or the adult education that I was saying before, has to be on a daily basis. So our companies, our public institutions, we need to be focused in this public leadership and cooperation to make the city a learning community. Because the time to market, it needs to be very fast. Answering the question, are cities prepared for the future of work? Not yet. the good news is that we are doing more and more things. The bad thing, or the bad news, is that the speed of the changes make that these things that we are doing is not enough. We need to do more and to answer more fast to these changes. So employability requires a very quick answer in order to answer to this time to market. And my final word, to make it short because it's complex. One question: is it possible to have good jobs in bad cities?
Mm-hmm.
The link between the quality of life and good jobs. Companies do not invest in cities where there is no talent, and talent does not go to cities where there is not a good quality of life. So skills is one pillar of it, but urban planning, health policies, sustainable mobility, and therefore quality of life is the condition sine qua non for attracting investments, to attracting talent, to develop the necessary skills that our cities need. So to sum up, we need to focus on cities as a learning communities to promote employability. Secondly, we need pleasant and healthy places to live and work. And third, we need to design a new talent supply chain in the cities. So talent is the new oil. We need to invest in skills. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Paul, thank you. Very stimulating, very thought-provoking. We are, you can see the hashtag at the bottom of the screen we're using here. So if you are on social media channels just now, some of those talent is the new oil, this addiction to flexibility, winner takes all, some of these, and they are some, but they're genuinely part of this conversation. So thanks a lot for moving things on and capitalizing on the conversation as we shift our focus to our city colleagues. I see we've got one question so far in Wink, which we'll keep an eye on the questions. We'll keep our panel discussion going, but we'll pick up on some of those questions shortly. So if you're in the audience and that's triggered some thoughts, or indeed the inputs from Vanessa or Lamia, then please jump in and give us your ideas and we'll share them with our speakers later. Let's jump from Barcelona west to Bogota, Colombia. Let's bring in Sebastian Marulanda, who is the Undersecretary of Economic Development in the city of Bogota. Sebastian, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us. We've already heard about this whole question about, Lamia talked about the importance systemically of being able to reach people who are furthest away from the labour market and getting much better at making those connections. We've also heard that impassioned input from Pau about the risk of widening exclusion. Just maybe from a Bogota perspective, and I know that one of the things you guys focused on during the pandemic was the experience of young people in particular. But maybe tell us about who are maybe the most marginalized groups you see in the city as these big changes happen, and what kinds of things can we do to try and connect with them more effectively? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Eddie, and good morning to everyone here from Bogota. Special greetings from Bogota, Colombia. Very happy to share with you in this panel at the beginning of the Local Skills Week. I would like to start with some key figures to put some context of the young people in Bogota. Now our unemployment, the youth unemployment rate is in 17.8%. Is almost 2 times the adult unemployment rate. However, youth unemployment rate didn't increase in the same proportion than the adult rate compared to 2019. Now, while the adult unemployment rate went down by 7.7% last year, the youth unemployment rate only went down 3.5%. We think that young employment is getting more opportunities in industry and commerce, but a lot of this labor work I'm not feeling very good to do it in English. Do you think it's possible to change to Spanish?
If you change in Spanish, then I'll just ask our audience to click on their channels. If you're not a Spanish speaker, click on your channel so you can hear the simultaneous interpretation. Absolutely, whatever you're most comfortable in.
Yes, maybe Spanish, I think. Sorry.
¿Sí? ¿Hacemos así? No, go ahead.
Sí. Vale, perfecto. ¿Ahí me escuchan mejor?
Sí.
Ok, sí, vale. Perdón el cambio. No, básicamente entonces lo que veíamos es que hay todavía unos sectores muy golpeados que demandaban mucho empleo de jóvenes y de mujeres, que son los dos segmentos de nuestra población más golpeados. Estos sectores como lo son industrias del turismo, industrias del entretenimiento, todo el servicio de restaurantes, cafeterías, universidades, lo que denominamos economía de la aglomeración, que en ciudades como Bogotá todavía no ha llegado a los niveles prepandemia. Y vemos también cómo desafortunadamente la brecha entre el empleo de hombres y de mujeres se sigue ampliando. Y nuestra principal hipótesis es que en algunos casos las mujeres dejaron de salir a buscar oportunidades laborales y en otros casos están muy enfocadas a la economía del cuidado no remunerado, cuidando jóvenes, niños o adultos que no tienen otra forma, digamos, de ser protegidos. Y ahí hay una brecha importante que debemos y en la que estamos trabajando para reducirlo. Sin duda, como lo han mencionado todos mis predecesores, la pandemia nos ha traído nuevos retos. El cambio de tendencias en los mercados, la digitalización y transformación de las industrias, y esto cambia totalmente la perspectiva del mercado laboral. Nosotros en Bogotá, en una ciudad, en un país en desarrollo, hemos afrontado muchos retos. El principal reto en el 2020 fue proteger la población, que no se llenaran las UCIs en los hospitales y que la gente no pasara hambre. Y en el 2020 ya pudimos enfocarnos en la recuperación de la economía y ya no solo salvar a las personas, sino salvar a las empresas, especialmente a las pequeñas. Con base en esto, ¿en qué nos hemos enfocado? Como lo decían ustedes también, hemos trabajado en 3 componentes muy fuertes de formación para brindar nuevas herramientas a nuestros jóvenes. La primera, tenemos un convenio que hicimos con LinkedIn que se llama Soy Digital, y aquí básicamente lo que buscamos es a 5,000 jóvenes darles herramientas especialmente enfocadas a industrias de las telecomunicaciones y tecnologías de información. Entonces, con este convenio con LinkedIn tenemos 5,000 licencias que en este momento tenemos como un 40%, estamos buscando complementar la convocatoria. También entendiendo que Bogotá cada vez se ha convertido en un hub para estos servicios de BPO y de call centers, tenemos un programa con un operador local para generar 2,000 cupos adicionales para que las personas se formen en inglés nivel B1 y B2. Y por último, estamos trabajando con el SENA, Servicio Nacional de Aprendizaje, aquí fortaleciendo los perfiles de los jóvenes, ayudándoles desde empezar a diligenciar una hoja de vida hasta tener algunas, digamos que cursos que los ayuden en habilidades blandas, habilidades digitales, para que su perfil sea un poco más atractivo frente a la demanda que existe en el sector productivo local. Por último, quisiera comentarles 2 temas en los que venimos trabajando fuertemente. Nuestra agencia pública de empleo la hemos fortalecido y ese fortalecimiento básicamente ha estado encaminado a colocar este año 30,000 personas con enfoque diferencial, enfoque de género, enfoque también etario, digamos que haciendo un trabajo importante con los jóvenes, colocar 30.000 personas. Esta agencia pública de empleo lo que hace es una intermediación entre la oferta de las empresas y los perfiles de nuestros jóvenes o de las personas que se registran, ¿sí? Para que se den una idea del esfuerzo que hemos hecho ahí, pasamos en el 2019 de 4.000 jóvenes o de 4.000 personas colocadas a 30.000 este año. Y por último, nuestro programa insignia, como tú lo decías, Eddie, nuestro empleo joven. Y en empleo joven, básicamente lo que entre el año pasado y vamos a tener una colocación de 40.000 jóvenes en empresas bogotanas, 40.000. Y esto lo hacemos subsidiando el 55% de la nómina de estos jóvenes con el compromiso que las empresas los contraten por lo menos un año, ¿sí? De esta manera buscamos continuar cerrando la brecha y permitir que los jóvenes encuentren alternativas. Y como lo mencionaba también Pau, no puede haber, digamos que, talento en ciudades que no lo promuevan. Con esto, y disculpas otra vez por haber cambiado el idioma, les agradezco.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really helpful, and I like the fact that you pinpointed the focus on particular industry sectors. I think Lamia mentioned the bridge intervention in Rotterdam, which also takes a targeted approach to linking young people to opportunities. So this is clearly an important space in terms of helping them make the right career choices. Also, thanks for raising the gender question, because the gender pay gap, lots of issues around gender, which has been, intermittently highlighted during COVID, but it's a structural issue. This isn't something which is just, happened overnight because of COVID. There have been long-standing issues about closing the gap around opportunities across gender. So thanks so much, Sebastian, for joining us. I can see we've got lots of questions coming through in the chat. This is a bit complicated because you are watching in the streaming link. What I'd normally say is I just invite Pau, for example, to answer the question in the chat very specifically about Barcelona and its relationship with its other sort of satellite cities in Catalonia. Maybe the way for us to do this is maybe for Pau to maybe put some comments in the chat, and we can our colleagues can look at a way of cutting and pasting them into the chat on InWink. We can try that, and in the meantime, let's carry on going, because I'd like to come back and open up the discussion, but I don't want to do that before I allow Karen and Jose Luis and also Jules to come in. So Karen, you're joining us from Stockholm. Again, great to see you. I can see you nodding in some of the discussion. I know you're heavily involved in gender and local labour markets. I know you're also involved in the whole question about climate neutral activities at the local level. So maybe just to get it started, what are you picking up from the conversation, and maybe what are the big opportunities you can see between the what's happening at the local level and the climate change agenda, which is a big macro conversation, obviously?
Thank you. And I'm so glad for this opportunity to meet some of my colleagues like this. So hi, everybody, and greetings from Stockholm City Hall. Well, if I would start by just picking something up, I want to pick up what Lamia said in the beginning, that we have to reach out the adult education to the ones who really needs it. I think that sometimes we have too much focus on creating education and support for only the people that are unemployed. But we have to see the link that we also have to reskill and upskill people who is already in a job. So I think that is one of the key questions that we as cities has to really work more on. But let me take you back to the question about how to link labor market and climate change actions. First of all, Stockholm, we have really high ambitions when it comes to our climate goals. And we also have very high ambitions when it comes to employment and have self-sufficient citizens. For example, in 2040, Stockholm will be completely fossil fuel free. And to make this high goals be realized, we really have to work together with the local businesses. We have to make great. So this is a challenge for us as It was a really long time ago since I spoke English. This pandemic has made me very
Yeah, take it easy. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just you're fine.
So let me take you back. So many people, especially young people, really wants to be a part of to fight the climate changes. So there's a great opportunity also for businesses that need green skills to attract young people working in these branches. So let me share with you 2 examples of what we do in Stockholm. First of all, we have launched what we call the Integration Pact. This is a cooperation with Stockholm businesses to meet the need of skills and at the same time create job opportunities for unemployed, especially with a focus on refugees and with a special focus on long-term unemployed. In another project in Stockholm, we call it Relocate. This is where we cooperate with smaller cities in the northern Sweden. Because in the northern Sweden, there's a huge transformation of our traditional industries. For example, production of fossil-free steel, for example, production of lithium batteries. And these industries and these smaller cities in the northern part of Sweden, they are in a great need of employees. And we have to cooperate with them, like informing unemployed people in Stockholm, but also in other large cities in Sweden, inform people of the great opportunities, the great job opportunities in the northern Sweden. So this is 2 examples of what we do, but let me also take the chance to raise a question that is a real challenge for us in Stockholm, and I guess this is a great challenge in many other cities as well. This is that we have to upgrade the attractiveness of the jobs where the recruitment needs are the highest. For example, in business and building and construction, for example, in transportation, for example, in health and social care sectors, because to reach the goals of being fossil free, we have to build greenhouses, we have to expand the metro system, we need more charging stations for electric cars. And then we need green industries, and the green industries needs these skills. So we really have to see the links between labor market and the fight of climate change. So thank you so much for raising these questions. And sorry about my language breakdown.
Tack. Karen, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks again for grounding us in the local. And I think sometimes one of the difficulties is connecting the big macro conversation with activity and interventions at local level, and the youth connection there, where young people who are quite often have a different view of the planet and its importance, quite rightly, to older people. That's a really great connection point. So thanks for raising that for us. Lots of these things we'll be coming back to in the course of the next few days, getting into this whole question, what do we mean by green skills? What are green jobs exactly? So all of that stuff's going to be unpacked in the sessions to come. But let's keep moving. Let's jump across the Atlantic again. Let's go to Mexico City. Let's go to Jose Luis, who is the Secretary of Labor and Employment Promotion in Mexico City. I know that you have a background, Jose Luis, in equalities and human rights and also gender issues, some of the issues we've already been talking about today. So thanks so much for joining us. I apologize in advance because I've just been told there's a little problem with our Spanish interpreting channel at the moment. So I don't know whether you plan to speak in English or Spanish, but I know that there's a little hiccup there right now. Anyway, you can surprise us and speak in either of those languages, but the floor is yours and it's very nice to have you with us.
Muchas gracias, me da mucho gusto compartir con todos ustedes. Por supuesto que hablaré en español y el objetivo central de la participación pues es compartir que para nosotros en esta etapa el eje y el acento tiene que estar centrado en el acceso efectivo a los derechos humanos laborales. Me parece que lo que nos ha sucedido en las distintas naciones en esta etapa de pandemia, por supuesto que nos lleva a la reflexión. Claro que existen nuevas formas y modalidades de empleo que se van generando, pero me parece fundamental que podamos abordarlas desde una perspectiva que nos permita centrar el esfuerzo en el acceso efectivo a los derechos humanos. En el caso, por ejemplo, de la Ciudad de México, hemos puesto en marcha un programa de reactivación económica que nos permite focalizar las acciones a poblaciones prioritarias. Tenemos un programa en Gobierno de México de Jóvenes Construyendo el Futuro que está diseñado para atender a personas de 18 a 29 años de edad que no estudian y que no trabajan por diversas circunstancias o condiciones. Y el objetivo central de este programa es atender a más de 2 millones de personas jóvenes. En el caso de la Ciudad de México, más de 40,000 personas jóvenes forman parte de este programa, de esta política pública, que busca capacitar. Durante un año se genera la posibilidad de brindar un apoyo de carácter económico y colocarlos en alguna empresa que nos dé la pauta de desarrollar habilidades. Es un esfuerzo en conjunto. Como bien se ha señalado aquí, la manera en la que podemos salir adelante es a través de juntar fuerzas, es a través de sumar esfuerzos con las empleadoras, con gobierno, con las personas que toman decisiones para poder generar mejores mecanismos de acceso efectivo a los derechos humanos. Nos parece central también compartir con ustedes que hemos puesto en marcha un programa de puntos de innovación, libertad, arte y saberes en la Ciudad de México, que se denomina Pilares, y el objetivo central de esta política pública puesta en marcha por Claudia Sheinbaum es acercar a la población de zonas vulnerables o de zonas que tienen un proceso de descomposición del tejido social, y lo que buscamos es que a través de la capacitación, a través de la innovación, a través del arte, a través de la posibilidad de desarrollar las libertades y las habilidades, podamos generar una reconstrucción del tejido social. Tiene que ver con la posibilidad de brindar oportunidades a quienes históricamente les han negado el acceso a los derechos. Y en materia laboral, pues por supuesto que es un derecho llave. Para nosotros el derecho al trabajo significa la posibilidad de acceder a otras ventajas y a otras oportunidades, a tener una posibilidad de acceder a una vida digna. Y eso requiere, por supuesto, que la suma de esfuerzos y la suma de voluntades. Hemos puesto en marcha también en la Ciudad de México un programa de atención que se llama Barrio Adentro. Es un programa que lo que busca es focalizar el esfuerzo a través de las áreas de intervención. Es de manera transversal, participa el área de administración y finanzas, el área de cultura, el área de trabajo, en donde todos tenemos la posibilidad de sumar a través de distintas acciones, la posibilidad de rescatar a jóvenes que están en una situación de violencia y que están en una posibilidad de ser incorporados a cuestiones de carácter delictivo. Lo que hacemos nosotros es intervenir a través del área de jóvenes, a través del área de trabajo, para llevarlos a un proceso de formación, a un proceso de capacitación que les brinde una oportunidad laboral en un modelo de economía social, en un modelo del cooperativismo, que también nos parece importante potencializar. El cooperativismo a nivel internacional, por supuesto que tiene un impacto positivo. Más del 10% de la economía global está basada en el cooperativismo, y nos parece fundamental que podamos fortalecer pues estos principios, estos ejes básicos de atención a poblaciones prioritarias. Hemos puesto en marcha también acciones de carácter incluyente en territorio, donde lo que se busca es colocar a personas que están en una situación de vulnerabilidad, personas adultas mayores, personas con alguna discapacidad, poblaciones específicas como la comunidad LGBTTI+, en la posibilidad de incorporarse a un empleo. Tener la posibilidad de potenciar también desde el gobierno de la Ciudad de México acciones que nos ayuden a tener procesos de desregulación administrativa para que las personas empleadoras puedan acceder a mejores procesos de inversión pública, porque también a través de la inversión privada podemos generar acciones que nos ayuden a generar empleo. Y nos parece ahí fundamental, por supuesto, que poner el acento en la perspectiva de género, porque en la Ciudad de México, durante 2019, durante 2020, la mayor parte de empleos que se perdieron fue con afectación directa a las mujeres. Ahora hemos puesto en marcha un programa, un proceso de reactivación económica que centra el esfuerzo en la posibilidad de colocar a las mujeres por múltiples razones, porque lo que sucedió también con la pandemia nos da una muestra de este sistema patriarcal que sí tiene una afectación directa en el acceso a las oportunidades a las mujeres, y por supuesto que hoy se puso también de manifiesto a través de esta emergencia sanitaria que las afectaciones mayores también fueron para las mujeres. Eso implica tener la posibilidad, pues, de focalizar política pública que nos ayude a incorporarlas en un esquema también de derechos. Hemos puesto en marcha un programa también de trabajo para las personas trabajadoras del hogar, para las mujeres que se dedican a esta actividad. En su mayoría son mujeres. Más de 200,000 personas en la Ciudad de México realizan trabajo del hogar, y eso implica generar política pública también para el reconocimiento de sus derechos. Hoy en día estamos avanzando para poder generar un ajuste en el marco normativo que reconozca los derechos de las personas que trabajan en plataformas, que no es un problema privativo de la Ciudad de México, es un problema también de carácter internacional, global, donde no existe un reconocimiento a los derechos de las personas que trabajan por aplicación, donde no existe la posibilidad de tener jornadas de trabajo definidas, donde no acceden a un modelo de seguridad social, donde no tienen la posibilidad tampoco de contar con el derecho de asociación, con la posibilidad de articular esfuerzos. Y bueno, pues hemos determinado en la Ciudad de México avanzar en el ámbito legislativo para poder analizar y debatir la viabilidad y la necesidad de reconocer los derechos de las personas trabajadoras de aplicaciones y evitar que sigamos teniendo empresas millonarias y personas precarizadas. Nos parece fundamental que podamos ahí poner el acento para tener esta posibilidad de acceder, como lo mencionaba en un principio, a un eje de visualizar los derechos humanos laborales como el tema central. Nos parece fundamental tener la oportunidad de participar con ustedes en esta actividad, escucharles, ha sido realmente muy interesante. Nos quedamos con varias de las ideas que ustedes han planteado y bueno, pues desde la Ciudad de México nos da mucho gusto tener esta posibilidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted. Thank you so much, José Luis. Again, you've opened the lid on lots of things. You talked about digital platforms, the gig economy, the precariousness of workers who are not always so visible. You've taken us right back to this whole question of dignity of work and the link to the SDGs and the very fundamental things which work means for people in civilized societies. You've also mentioned cooperative and social economy. And again, these are things we'll be picking up in our future sessions. So thanks again for that really thorough, great overview of what's happening in Mexico City and those macro themes. I'm going to bring Jules Pipe in now from London. Jules, you've been absorbing all this stuff, and I'm sure lots of it familiar. I mean, I lived in Hackney when you were the mayor of Hackney, and I know that you've got a long track record of working in many of these areas. The clock's against us slightly, but I'm going to give you the floor just to kind of make some few final comments and maybe give some insights into the recent work in London around the adult skills review, maybe what that's teaching us about some of the things that Lamia mentioned right at the start of this session this afternoon. Thanks. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Eddie. Thanks very much. Yeah, I've been struck, but from all the speakers, by the similarity of challenges and barriers, the similarity of new challenges through new technology and the pandemic. and similarity of approaches that we're all identifying to tackle all these issues. I mean, last year's OECD report really highlighted really important points regarding how London should tackle some of those challenges. One of the things it did call for was increased devolution to create a really more coherent adult learning system in London, more integration between training and careers advice in the capital, and a stronger role for employers in adult learning and workplace training. And those are all things that the Mayor has been calling on the government to devolve in common with all the mayoral authorities in the UK. I mean, here in London, the Mayor's only recently, in the last couple of years, gained control of the £300 million adult education budget. But advice on careers, advice and funding for apprenticeships and a lot of other elements are still controlled by central government. We are one of the most centrally controlled capital cities in the world by its own government. We're probably more constrained in what we can spend, what we can raise to spend than any other capital city. So that really constrains what we can do compared to what we'd like to do on skills. More devolution makes sense, not just to London, but to other areas of the country, so that we can all take specific actions, so we can address specific actions to address the specific challenges that we all face in our localities. You know, the challenges are different from London, Leeds, Liverpool, Birmingham. We've got certain economic strengths in areas such as finance and digital, life sciences, the creative industries. You know, a lot of our labour force is highly skilled. But on the other hand, we face persistent inequalities in skills and labour market outcomes. You know, some groups, Black Londoners, obviously disabled Londoners, inevitably those with lower qualifications, face far greater challenges finding jobs and progressing into work in the capital. And of course, all these things have been exacerbated by the pandemic, the changing employer skills needs, the pandemic, but also positive things, you know, that we're trying to do, such as our ambitious net zero commitments. And of course, sadly and inevitably, Brexit as well. They're increasing recruitment difficulties. So we've got a whole roster of things there to tackle. But within these constraints, you know, we are implementing a lot of new initiatives. A lot of things we're introducing do rise to those challenges that OECD pointed to. And because we're short of time, I'll just quickly touch on two. One's the Mayor's Academies programme. It's a virtual programme. We're not building new buildings because we've got plenty of buildings already, but it's an academies programme to support Londoners get the skills they need to find good work. And it's focusing on those who most need help to get into work. And it's the sectors that it wants to, that it is focusing on are ones that are key to London's recovery. So creative, digital, green, health and hospitality sectors. And a lot of this, that what's involved is simply about coordination. Because we have the buildings to skill people up in, we have the skills courses, but are they the right courses? Are employers involved in helping shape those courses? How do would-be employees find their way onto those courses? And it's all about creating linkages and pathways to make the system work and make the best of all the infrastructure that we've already got in place. The second is a new multimedia awareness campaign. Again, like the previous one, the coordination. This might seem a bit obvious or basic, but there's a huge issues to overcome about ignorance of those pathways that I mentioned before, but also parents as well. Parents can be quite a big barrier to overcoming, a barrier that creating sort of prejudice about certain jobs. The construction industry, I know, was mentioned by one of your panelists, and that's typical of something that has moved on so much in the last 20, 30 years, but perhaps the idea of the negative ideas that might be amongst parents about what the construction industry involves puts young people off. So we've got a lot of educating to do for people sort of outside of the skills area. And thirdly, we're using our commissioning power to make sure that the skills providers themselves take steps to diversify their own workforces, adopting good work practices and working towards, for example, net zero commitments by 2030, just like we're expecting everyone else to work towards that. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour across some of the challenges, some of the things that we're doing to address that, and there's a lot more still to do.
Thanks a lot, Jules. And I love what I do, but one of the things I hate doing is squashing people into packaging these really complex things in the matter of a few minutes, but you've all done it really fantastically well. So thanks to all of our speakers. Jules has again raised a couple of key things we'll come back to. One is this key role of local governments, this facilitation, brokerage, joining the dots, this kind of connection coordination role you talked about, which I think is really vital. I'm sure will pop up again, and I'm sure it might pop up in our next session. And then this key thing you said at the end, and again, it does seem obvious, but this awareness. And I think when we talk about the future of work, it's actually quite scary for many people. It is a big unknown. There is a whole question of whether this is stuff we've seen before and business as usual, or whether it's something completely different. So it's very challenging, quite frightening. So helping people make sense of it. And messaging some of those key influencers you mentioned, parents, teachers, employers, all of that stuff is in the frame, and I'm sure we'll be picking up on those in future sessions. I'm going to stop there and to say a massive thank you to all of our panelists for joining us from all over the world. Great inputs to get us started off. You've really set the scene fantastically well. I will leave you now to get on with the rest of your busy days, and we will carry on with our next panel. We'll just change the furniture, rearrange configure the room a little bit. So we are carrying onward straight into the second session. This is actually session 1, confusingly, but it's our second session. We're going to get a little bit more operational here. And let me just say that, it's really great we're having these questions coming through. We kind of ran out of road there. So we didn't have a chance to pick them up, but hopefully we'll keep them on our screens. We'll try and pick them up in this conversation. These sessions are all recorded, by the way, so there's a chance to dip back into them later on. I've just been told as well, we're still having a little bit of a glitch with our Spanish channel. We are frantically trying to fix that. So apologies and bear with us if you're trying to use that channel and you're struggling. So we're hoping to sort it shortly. But let me just tell you what's happening now. So we're going to shift our focus to a related topic. The question here is meeting future skills needs locally. And the big question is revolution or evolution, which we've kind of already talked about a little bit. And just to on the theme of interactivity, we're going to launch a poll, because this is a session which could have a one-word answer, revolution or evolution. So our question is, which side of the fence are you on? So of those two options, which of those buttons would you push? And my colleague Adriana is going to launch the poll. We'll give you a few minutes to answer the poll, and then we'll come back and see what you think, and it'll help us just get a feel for who's in the room, which is easier when you're standing looking at people eyeball to eyeball, but much more difficult when you're doing it this way. So it'll give us a sense of what your thoughts are. While we're doing that, I'm going to introduce our keynote listener, and then I'll introduce our panel. And we thought instead of having a keynote speech for the second session, we'd invite a keynote listener to come in, say a few words, and then go away and really actively listen to the discussion, and then just play back the key things that she hears at the end of the session. So delighted to have Karen Mcguire with us. Karen, as many of you will know, is the head of local employment skills and social innovation division within OECD. Karen, thanks for joining us. Maybe a couple of reflections on what you've just heard before you go off into the wings to do your active listening job. I think you're on mute. We've tested this to death today. That's always what happens, isn't it?
Hey, Eddie, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
excellent.
Perfectly. Yeah,
well,
hi.
Greetings.
Thanks for joining us.
Great. Greetings to all, and glad to join you. And great discussions earlier. I mean, we took away some really fun phrases. Talent is the new oil. You don't have good jobs in bad cities. That doesn't work. We need to really highlight a bit all of the different ways to become more inclusive, all the different issues to meet the green transition. So I think the political leaders here working on this in cities around the world have given us some great material. So maybe just just to kick off this session, and I know we have several great speakers with us. So on the vote, I'll just say, let's make it fun. Let's say revolution, and just to kick us off, and just some 3 ideas. So first, where are we today? Where are we going, and what can we do to get there? And a couple of thoughts just today, just to keep in mind a few stats. So employers can't find the workers they need. And across the OECD, it's more than 2 out of 5 employers stating that they have difficulties in filling their jobs. And of course, the skills mismatch is, one of the big drivers. This holds back growth and further job creation. We also see that over 1 in 3 workers saying they don't have the skills to do the jobs they currently have. And we also have a lot of people that are overqualified for their jobs. And this leads to lower productivity and wages and missed opportunities in skills use. And as came up in the panel earlier, we also heard a lot about how far we are from being inclusive. And if we look at the differences in between those with higher skills and those that we call low skilled, although perhaps we should say that this is really, we're talking about people in maybe low paying jobs, but maybe have some great skills that we're not sufficiently recognizing. But if they were to participate in training at the same rates of those with higher skills, that would add 55 million more adults in the OECD to train every year, because they're 1/3 is likely to receive training. And if we look at different communities, let's zoom in at Zurich, Helsinki, Stockholm, who have amongst the highest rates of adult participation among cities in Europe. And if we take Barcelona, where we are virtually today and hopefully in person very soon, if as many adults in Catalonia, the region where Barcelona is located, trained as much as those frontrunners, that's 700,000 more people that need to undergo training regularly. And in Thursday, we're in Berlin virtually, and there they would need to train another 500,000 people on a more regular basis to kind of catch up with those frontrunners. So that's just the state of affairs today. Now, if we think about what lies ahead, and we heard some statistics at the beginning of the opening session here, on automatization and digitalization, 1 in 2 jobs are likely to have significant impacts. This means, we have 14% that would likely to disappear, 32% with significant change. All of this means massive reskilling. And this is adding above and beyond all of the issues that were raised on some of the challenges we have today. And across OECD regions, there's a 10-fold difference between 4 to 40% of jobs at high risk of automation, depending on what community you're living in across the OECD. Then we add our green colored glasses. And of course, this green transition was raised by some of the speakers earlier. And we're just starting to scratch the surface on the massive reskilling efforts there. And this is an issue we'll tackle in our upcoming job creation and local economic development report. But there are, of course, the jobs that have been mentioned that are on the decline, like coal mining. But we just heard the Deputy Mayor of London mention construction jobs. These jobs are here to stay, but the nature of the skills required for those jobs as they become more environmentally friendly and use new materials, those need more and active reskilling and upskilling. And also, as was mentioned, maybe a change in how people perceive these important jobs that we need to fill. And then let's not forget demography. We live longer, we work longer. It requires more skills changes. It's not a one shot. It's about a lifetime of learning. And we also see with demography, a lot of communities already experiencing labor shortages, and an aging population, lower birth rates is not going to make this easier. And then COVID-19 hit. And while we heard that some of the big picture numbers on unemployment overall are doing well, we still have a lot of places that are, and types of people that are not fully caught back up. But it has changed the way that we live, work, produce, and consume. And just think 2 years ago, how much we have had to jump in terms of ICT skills use today relative to pre-pandemic in February 2022. And we'll hear later on today more about how the younger generations might shake things up a little bit given their different perspectives. So basically, all of those stats are saying we need to upskill and reskill and have hundreds of millions more training relative to what we're doing today. So massive, massive task. So what can we do? Well, I think some of our panelists will be able to tell us a little bit what they're doing from their different perspectives. And so what I will do is just flag, in addition to the need to address some of the traditional barriers that we have, but also that we need to be more creative. And just to cite some examples, the social economy reskilling coal miners from beekeepers to beekeepers in the US, or in France having a cleaning company training directly with a retirement home to transition workers from firm to firm before they hit unemployment, or private companies developing their own cloud certification system like at Amazon Web Services, or trade unions that have networks of Sherpas that help with trying to get this gap and be representatives to their fellow workers on how to access lifelong learning. And so I think, you know, with all the different types of communities, rural, urban, and people need jobs and training where they live. And that's why this local angle is so important, why local information is so important, and why these strong local partnerships are really the glue that makes this all stick together. And so look forward to circling back at the very end. Thanks a lot, Karen. Great. Join us at the back end of this. Fantastic. In the meantime, I can see that our audience, interestingly, are sitting right on the fence. Would you believe it? 50% saying evolution, 50% saying revolution. So what we thought was like 90% would say, throw everything out, or 90% would say, hang on to everything. You're as ambivalent as the rest of us are in terms of how to take the next steps. I suppose that's a good reflection of where we all are at the moment. So just sort of, maybe one more thing, just before I introduce our panel, we're going to launch a second poll here, and this is about the challenges. So what I'd like to look at this poll is just the biggest challenges you think cities face around this conversation that's already kind of up and running this afternoon. And we'll leave that open for a while, and we'll bring that back in after our final panelists have spoken, just to see how that connects with what they're about to share with us this afternoon. So thanks, Karen, for getting us started. Let me just do a quick whistle-stop tour of who's on our table today. We have Jordi Arufi Hernandez from Mobile World Capital in Barcelona. We have Ron Painter from the National Association of Work Boards in the USA, and it's great to have these different transatlantic perspectives. We have Martina Malakova, who is a businesswoman, chief executive of an electronics firm based in Bratislava in Slovakia, actively involved at the European level too with a whole range of things. So really good to have her employer perspective on this. On the trade union side, we have Union for Unite with Stephen Craig joining us from London. I think, Stephen, great to see you. Thanks for taking time out with us today. And then last but not least, Dana Elefthariadou from DG Grow in the European Commission, who's been instrumental in leading their work on intelligent cities. Some really interesting stuff coming around from that work around localizing the Green Deal and some of the things we've already started to talk about this afternoon. That is our fantastic panel. I'm going to jump in and get started by going to Jordi in Barcelona, maybe asking you, Jordi, we've already heard from London, Jules saying that this whole question of coordination, bringing everyone together is really, really important for cities. And just from the Barcelona experience, what's happening there to bring local government and employers and some of the other social partners together, because no one party can solve this big challenge we have. So again, just maybe take us to Barcelona, if only virtually, and tell us what's happening on the ground there. And thanks, great to see you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and hello to all the panelists, all the audience, and thank you, OECD, for inviting us and hosting. Hello from sunny Barcelona. Yeah, fully agree. You have to coordinate, you have to facilitate, so I would like to share a bit Barcelona experience. And Barcelona actually is facing this same paradox that I believe that most of the cities in OECD countries are facing, right? So on the one hand, as long as the digital economy is mushrooming in our ecosystem, in our city, companies, both newborn companies, but also incumbent companies, are posting more and more ICT jobs, for instance, right? So the key data for Barcelona is that in just last year, in 2021, they posted around 35,000 ICT jobs in the city, which is actually 50% more than in 2020, which 2020 was not a bad year, but the growth was 50%, and this is a sustained growth. For these 35,000 ICT job offers, we are able to cover more or less 2/3 of these job offers. There's 1/3 that we are not able to cover because we create a lot of, let's say, skilled people with ICT skills, but it's not enough. We attract also international talent, but it's not enough. And of course, there is a new layer of complexity and competition. And what is going on recently is that our best, for instance, software engineers are hired by, I don't know, US companies, startups that are hiring remotely in full-time jobs, but remotely, and they're paying almost double that they will get in Barcelona. On the other hand, this very same digitization is creating redundancy in certain jobs, right? So we see how incumbent industries are transforming themselves. We see, to give an example, how retail banking, in Spain, retail banking is a big industry. We see how their brick-and-mortar stores are being closed because they're being substituted by mobile apps, by financial robo-advisors, and so on and so on. So it's this very same digital economy is creating scarcity of jobs, but is also creating, well, abundance of other skills that we don't need as much anymore. So as you mentioned, and as it was Jules mentioned, what we are doing here is to coordinate, to facilitate, so to create an alliance. Actually, we created the Barcelona Digital Talent Alliance in order to bring together all the stakeholders. So we bring together employers, all kind of employers, so newborn ICT companies, incumbent companies that are transforming their core business into a more digital driven, and so on. We bring together also policymakers, so Barcelona City Council, along with the government of Catalonia, and other public bodies, and also training institutions. And our main, let's say, way to face these challenges by especially focusing on reskilling. You were mentioning before, reskilling for us is the most sustainable way to face this problem, because instead of facing in the fire and hire way, right? So you fire people who holds a lot of knowledge and also try to hire people that actually doesn't exist in the market, you try to reskill your own workforce. So in order to do that, we accompany people in the entire journey. So first of all, you have to raise awareness. I think it was coming from Stockholm said we have to make attractive certain jobs. Also, ICT jobs have to become more and more attractive, because when we track for instance, the people who is joining university in ICT, we see that it's stuck or even is lowering the demand from students. So what we are creating is awareness about, okay, ICT jobs can be for you. Also, you can reskill yourself. You can become a software developer too through a short-term program, 3 to 6 months, for instance, in a bootcamp academy. We also train, and this is very important, we help to train, but we do not train. We create the training programs. So we bring together all the industry, we design the programs according to the needs of the ICT industry, and then public institutions will fund those courses, and then private institutions usually will operate the courses, right? But the key part is to bring all parts together. And finally, we help also in the last part of the journey, this talent to land in their new job. So we cover the entire journey. I think we have just 5 minutes, so I think for an introduction, it's okay. But I'm very happy to follow the conversation afterwards.
Okay, Jordi, thanks a lot, and thanks for cramming so much into that short slot. And you picked up one of the things that Paul said, this competition for talent. Going back to the kind of power of the city stuff. It's a new oil was a great phrase he used. So this. It looks like you're building on what it's a bit of evolution, but there's some revolution there because you're doing things in a different way, but you're building on the infrastructure we already had. Let's jump to the US. Let's bring Ron in, and maybe Ron, it might be worth you saying a little bit about what what the work boards are, how they work, just briefly, so for people who aren't familiar with them, and then just I guess tell us whether this conversation plays out with the discussions you're having on the ground. At state level, at city level, where we're trying to address this mismatch. Is that a familiar scenario in your neck of the woods too?
Yeah, Eddie, let me first of all say thanks to you and thanks to OECD for putting this together and also for inviting me. The conversation thus far sounds very familiar to the things that we're dealing with here. I think I want to explain. So there are about 560 local business-led workforce development boards across the US and the territories. Part of their function is to work in the workforce development system, this understanding of the regional labor markets that they are in. It is helping to convene the players in that regional labor market. It is really focused on working with businesses to create career pathways, to understand what are career pathways in business, and then to work with education to see that there is enough skill development capacity in the regional system in order for these pathways to work. So what I want to do is just describe, I think, 3 issues that we're kind of contending with, and maybe a little bit about how some of the boards are doing that. Understand that I always feel completely overmatched by what is going on across 560 local business-led boards versus us as the national association representing them. In terms of the worker, I think some of the things that we are seeing is we're starting to see as the pandemic begins to ease a little bit, we're starting to see burnout. And we're starting to see workers that have been in, quote, essential industries and essential positions starting to walk away. So while you can see the healthcare numbers, national employment numbers remain about the same, RNs who were on the front line of the emergency room, the ICU units, they're walking away from hospitals. So now we have an RN shortage. We're also seeing educators starting to look at what other options do I have. So my own expectation is that as we see the school year end, we could see a lot of current teachers walk out of the education system. We've already seen over 3 million people retire in 2021. That's probably about 1.2 million, 1.3 million more than we would expect in a normal year. So you're seeing this really, and as other people have described, I think this really big angst on the part of the labor force itself. Secondly, so boards are trying to work with making sure that people understand what options are available to them in their regional market. So a lot of work around translating skills from one sector to another sector. How can you move? A lot of work on online assessments. What are the skills that you have? What are the skills that are in demand in the market? So there's a lot of focus on the technology aspect of what we're doing. What can labor market analysis help us understand about the positions? With regard to the business, what we're seeing is that there is a lot of work on the part of the local boards in helping business understand that old position description that you had. We really need to go back in and look at that, because you really need to start talking about the skills that you're actually looking for. And what does that translate to in terms of the credential and the competencies that you're looking for, so that we can better work with educators on what are they teaching. We can work with job seekers. So you're seeing a lot of work with the boards, particularly with small companies that don't have that HR department, working with them to help them understand, here's the name of the credential. Here's the name of the competency that you're looking for, so that it better translates into the market. So a lot of work, again, also then with different populations inside the labor force to help them understand what are the competencies that are in demand in the regional markets. And finally, the system itself. I understand that in the U.S., in an average month, there's probably over 6 million hires that happen in the U.S. labor market. And there's probably about 5.8, 5.9 million separations. So there's over 100 million transactions a year in the US labor force. So it's a big labor force, 165 million. We guess that between 13 to 18 million are going to have to be retrained as we look at increasing levels of automation. A really good study coming out of Canada, looking at Canadian firms that have purchased robotics and have upgraded automation in terms of what's happening in the skill shift there. So I think we're trying to figure out scale. How do you do scale? And of course, that's so uneven when you look at the geography of the US. I think the other thing is the recognition that our industry, as workforce development professionals, our industry is undergoing massive transformation. Dealing with somebody virtually is very different than dealing with them across the table. We also pride ourselves as a system. Our completion rates when we're working with somebody to reskill them is 80%. That is not the case with traditional post-secondary. So boards are starting to look at, well, how do we add those companion counseling? How do we add that companion, I don't want to call it case management per se, but how do we add that counseling and coaching to deal with the other things that happen in our lives, childcare, housing, transportation, illness, all those pressures. So I think we're trying to adapt to the virtual world. I think it's also a call. And finally, 1.6 trillion in US dollars has now been committed to infrastructure upgrades. We had problems finding construction workers before the pandemic. This is just going to be crazy to try and hunt that. But anyway, Eddie, I'm happy to take questions. I'm really happy to be here. I am learning a lot. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ron. And thanks for, again, joining the dots a little bit. So, I mean, you've introduced this new virtual versus face-to-face, and that's hybrid is the new word. We're all feeling a way to work out exactly what that means, but very helpful for you to put your finger on that because it hasn't come up yet. You also connected with Jordi said about, reskilling. So, these people, new workers aren't suddenly going to appear out of nowhere. They're already in the labor market. It's about looking at the competence they have, making sense of them, looking at their transferability. All that stuff is in the frame as part of the conversation. So thanks for reinforcing those points. We've got some questions still coming in, which is great. And hopefully we'll have a chance to pick up some of those later on. I'm going to go to Martina now because Martina, you're kind of in the hot seat because you run a business. You're the chief executive managing director of an electronics firm, as I said, based in Bratislava. You also have the big picture. You're involved in, with your employer's body hat on, talking about the role of employer bodies. And someone asked earlier on in the chat about what's the role of the private sector in digital skilling. So there is a question about what is the role of employers in this, especially small employers, in this big shift that we see. So I give the floor to you. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And thanks again for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation to this debate. Clearly, having and keeping skilled people is more and more a daily issue. As employers, we have to take into account that for years, values such as seniority and staying in the same ecosystem are no more relevant. So, as an entrepreneur, it is a key question that we need to answer. How do we find and keep skilled staff? The current situation is both a representative of SMEs and traditional sectors, such as the construction businesses, to construct our houses, our factories. The situation with the revolutionary change regarding skills and to find a blue or white collar is challenge. The problem of the education system is really global. The specific area arises in SMEs. First, jobs most often require multiple skills. If the SMEs do have the kind of capacity to attract talent, if of course we stay within the traditional sector, they are often able to engage only lower skilled workers. The third, when people start to be well skilled, They want to change their job and to go to another company, bigger, safer, only to try something new. And the fourth, life standards and expectations change with the coming generations. They want flexibility, work on different projects, change their life plan very often. Namely, that you know that without people, you will not create value. And you have to be completely able to constantly switch and replace your scope of works with the new people. For all companies, point 4 is a challenging, unsustainable situation, but one that perhaps we created as employers by not being able to place enough confidence for the employees to stay in the ecosystem we are proposing. This being said, what could we as employers bring to the party? We have the tools to help more quickly skill new teams for our needs in some cases. And of course, we have to continue to develop this approach. We as a company try to find a balance between the expectation of the labor market and us. I mentioned earlier that corporates have the advantages and to continue to reskill and upskill our personnel, and to be active also on all initiatives which can bring improvements in the labor market. We, as employers' organizations, communicate with government on the importance of lifelong learning, quality of the education system, attracting talent, and we can see the changes coming. But for the current situation, it is all too slow. We don't have doctors, teachers, electricians, waiters. The gaps are growing, and the post-pandemic situation pushed this evolution in the revolution. So my question is, where are the people? Is it our social system which motivates people to stay at home and occasionally do some projects in order to win more money? I think the situation has to stop or crash. Because if there is a lack of the skilled people, lack of needed talent, a lack of traditional workers, this kind of solutions focus on solving my problem in my company, in my region, in my country, will only transfer the problem to our neighbors. From companies to their suppliers, from one region to another region, from one country to another country. But it doesn't resolve our common problem of the revolution in the labor market for the future, which has already created and could create large societal disparities with a geopolitical impact. We, as a society, have to realize that we need each other. We create together society, the value chain, our ecosystem, our global future. I want to go to the restaurant at the evening. So to answer to your question, what can employers and employers organizations do? The answer is alone, nothing. We must all work together to address these issues. Alone, we push the problem towards somebody else. Together, with schools, regions, other authorities, and with each individual, we can do a lot of to pass through this labor market revolution successfully and to push together our energy, capacity, and work as humanity into topics which concern our planet, such as the green transition. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Martina. Great stuff there. And I think you said it's just all too slow. One of the problems we have is we now kind of live in dog years, where every 1 year is 7 years or whatever it is that dogs have. So, we're running faster and faster and faster, and the kind of the tectonic plates around the systems are just really struggle to keep pace with the challenges. And that's, I'm sure I know we'll talk about that in one of the sessions on Thursday, this whole fit with the education system, for example. And you also mentioned this question, and displacement is something that's coming up in several of these conversations, whether we mean displacement by, Barcelona's relationship with the smaller satellite Catalan cities around it, sucking in talent, whether we mean, as Jordi said, software engineers being poached by US firms remotely, whether we're talking about, as you say, corporates taking talent from SMEs. So this whole thing about, it's that old thing about if we, what's the phrase? If we train them, they might leave, but if we don't train them, they might stay. So in a sense, we want them to upskill, but also to stay with us. So, and that's an issue for companies, for cities, for regions. So again, that's a thread I can see running through several of these discussions this afternoon. So thanks a lot for helping us see that kind of pattern. And let's flip things around a little bit. Let's bring Stephen Craig in from Unite the Union. Stephen, I know that you've as well as working with Unite, where you take care of the kind of learning and skills stuff. You've also worked with the ILO, so you've got that bigger picture perspective of what's happening. And I guess one of the key questions for this is is who pays for stuff, and who's paying for the upskilling. How are vulnerable workers in particular who are on the fringe of the labour market, how do we make sure they get the resources they need to keep their skills fresh? And also, I suppose, in terms of where do trade unions fit into this bigger picture conversation, this collaborative model that we've talked a lot already about this afternoon. And great to see you, by the way. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Okay, thanks, Eddie, and hello, colleagues. Thanks for the opportunity for the OECD. I just want to run through a couple of things, which are some sort of general, maybe some more specific, but trade unions from their inception have been, advocates and supporters of learning, training and skills since the days of our formation. Where we are now, if you want that back to the future historical aspect, is we're seeing a plethora of different mega trends of developments which are framing the risks that are encountered by workers. And they include, as others have mentioned, climate change, demographics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, algorithmic interventions, digitization, and also the rise of platform economies. And it's not just necessarily these as elements or machines, it's also what's within those, the human elements, if you want. When we look at those challenges, I suppose it's like a pestle analysis on steroids. We're going through an awful lot at the moment. And the McKinsey Institute reports, I think they identified in their jobs lost, jobs gained report that effectively around about worldwide, technically half of what people do today could be automated. Now, we look at that in terms of its skills elements, but we got to look at that in terms of its human collateral elements as well. So effectively, we're in a situation whereby in terms of those changes, we've got a lag, we've got a disconnect. Companies don't flick on a switch. We don't go from, the analog to digital. It takes time. It's restricted by culture, by machine, by funding, by regulation. But we're still looking at around about 400 to 800 million people potentially being affected by possibly losing their jobs. So I suppose for workers, there's a doomsday scenario in terms of that being catastrophic job losses, threats of redundancies, displacement, the need to travel and move, also salary reductions in terms of the cost of jobs and what, price we put on jobs. Also in terms of direct occupational aspects and direct work aspects, alone they're not the only important things. The other things important are, if you want, psychological elements. The loss of identity, the loss of purpose, status, pride, dignity. These affect both families and individuals, and also work. Obviously, massive skills mismatches, skills utilization, upskilling, reskilling, occupational issues, marginalization, social dumping, the decline of industries and communities. Very much what we've seen in the United Kingdom in the mining industries is a catastrophic example. So there are also specific risks to other types of workers, women, younger people, disabled workers, people from Black minority and ethnic groups who may well struggle in these transitions and are often the victims or marginalized on the edges of these changes. So there's a risk for workers as well that their voices won't be heard in the decisions that are being made. And in relation to that, unions have that role. There's also just a couple of other things I'd like to say, Eddie, in terms of there's often a disconnect between work, which we're very good at creating, and jobs. And that's an important distinction. We can look at creating work, but not necessarily in the form of jobs that people can sustain an existence upon. So, we've atomized the employment relationship, 0-hour contracts, agency, casual labor, and those kind of elements they don't design in opportunities for learning, training, for stability. And we've got, even issues around skills. I think CDFOP, European Centre for Development and Vocational Training, identified in 100 million online job vacancies, they highlighted over 3,000 separate skills. So we've got to be clear about identifying the skills for tomorrow. What are green skills? And also looking at, that being covered later in the conference, it's something that we need to address. So we've also got to look at those changes. Where will workers go for quality information, advice and guidance on the jobs and the skills that they should be training for? How do they access funding? How do they secure time off for training? And how will they navigate the new learning and skills landscapes? And that's a space unions can fill. So where we can help, I think we can use our leverage, our power to look at placing people at the center of economic and social policies and business practices for the future. At a granular level, unions help with numeracy, literacy, digital skills, language, communication, continuing professional development, signposting people to jobs, and securing equal access to training and learning opportunities across the piece. And, we've worked with our colleagues, 40 city colleagues, to look at engaging in our role of bringing learning and ecosystems together with employers, unions, academics, and local authorities, and enterprise partnerships who are hopefully working on just transition. And particularly involving institutional investors, because none of this works without the money. But we want to make sure that that's done over the next 20 to 30 years to make our skills and industries sustainable. And just a couple of closing things in relation to sort of contextual. Skills revolution, evolution, both. Culturally, these things take time to change, but we do need some disruptive mechanisms to change things a little bit faster. We have to remind ourselves in these situations, there's always a fine line between vision and hallucination. And in relation to that, we can't expect individuals who may have or be capacity building their own skills portfolios to be aware of global trends, of understanding what skills are needed. So we need a joined up approach. We've unfortunately left a vacuum of career support and guidance in most of our education systems. And closing things, I would just go on to say, we're key to this human-centered aspect is making this just transition become a principle, a policy, a process, and a practice. Because without that, we will look at social dumping globally, and without that, we will not prepare our skills to be human-centered in the new world of work. And that being a review, if you want, of rhetoric, perception, and the reality gaps that exist. And just to finish on a couple of comments that one or two other colleagues have made, that reuse, recycling, repurposing of skills is important. We've been involved in the construction sector in a talent retention scheme. So we've looked at, rather than sectors lose skills, can we repurpose those skills into other sectors and create a virtual bridge for sustainable skills tomorrow? Our education system effectively for the last 200 years has been predicated on knowledge delivery and transfer. There's a reality that the machines are going to be smarter than we are. So we need to focus on the unique selling points of the human, that we've got empathy, that we've got creativity, we've got an aging workforce and society, develop on, if you want, teamwork, and look at growing green jobs, working in the attention economy, which is absolutely massive at the moment, learn, unlearn, and relearn so that we can sustain ourselves in this transition, and also, be in a situation whereby we do that collaboratively, because without us working together, we will fail catastrophically. Thanks, Eddie.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Stephen. And that mantra of learn, unlearn, and relearn is a very good kind of hook to hang lots of these bits of the conversation on. And again, you mentioned this whole thing about talent retention and moving people across and working with people to manage this kind of disruption. And I like to think you said right at the start about the distinction jobs and work. And that also is kind of deeply rooted in the sense of place and belonging to a community and being part of something rather than just having a kind of professional vocational role. So all of that is in the mix when we talk about places and the importance of local in terms of the bigger conversation about what's happening in the big picture. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Great to have you as part of this conversation. I'm going to move to Dana now. And Dana, sorry to you again, it's hard to absorb all this stuff and then come in at the end. And I know that you're just picking up on what that point of Stephen's about locality and jobs and you're working around proximity cities and this whole concept of the 15-minute city, which also ties into our kind of notion of just transitions and the shift to climate neutral. I mean, some of the work that you've been doing around intelligent cities, again, plugs into this really well, I think. So maybe I just give you the floor and invite you just to maybe just share with us some of the key messages from that work you've been doing, which might connect with some of these things which our other panelists have picked up earlier today. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and thank you to OECD for organizing this very important discussion and for the invitation. Indeed, a few words on what the European Commission is doing, especially in the Intelligent Cities Challenge, is that we work with a vibrant community of 136 cities, and we are targeting on purpose small to medium cities. The idea is to help them drive their digital and green transition, but also their social resilience based on use of advanced technology. So the technology element is very important there. One of the 5 thematic priorities of the Intelligent Cities Challenge is indeed the up and reskilling of the local workforce. And of course, the big priority of the European Union in this commission is indeed the green and digital transition and the market that works for people. But cities are a very important lever for this process. I don't need to repeat what all the previous speakers practically said, how important the skills, lifelong learning and reskilling is for our days. COVID only accelerated this need. This need was very important before, but with COVID, we have seen that becoming really an emergency. Now, from our work with cities, what we have noticed is that some pioneering cities took the up and reskilling effort on their hand. I mean, they took responsibility for what's happening in their cities because, as Karen mentioned before as well, people would like to work and stay in their cities. Most of the people would like to do that, but based on quality jobs that are offered there. So 5 elements I would like to share with you as cities are trying to be successful in this major reskilling effort that we are all undertaking. First element is cities need to be strategic in their approach. I mean, political leadership is of essence. If you have the mayor or the city council saying this is our big priority in the city, this most probably creates a very good dynamic, but this is not enough by itself. Because who is delivering the reskilling efforts is very much a collaborative process. We've heard about that enough, but practically it's the 4 helix approach there. Indeed, political leadership by the local government, but then very, very close collaboration with industry, local industry and small and medium enterprises, local training, universities and training institutions, but also the citizens and social economy players to identify what sort of skills gap we have. So also, a city needs to ask itself the question, what sort of city we want to be in the future? What sort of jobs we would like to retain? If, for example, we are a coal mining city, do we really want to be that in 10 years' time, or is this an opportunity for a new start? This type of questions to redefine what we want to be in the future. That's about the strategy. The second element is assessment of the skills gap and of the skills needs. And the city cannot do that without this collaborative process. So practically bringing together, discussing continuously with industry, with local stakeholders, with university on what are the skills gaps now but also what we foresee the skills gap to be in 5 to 10 years' time, in order to be able to have very targeting reskilling campaigns for the people, to shift people from sector to sector. We have seen that very vividly during COVID, where cities like Amsterdam, for example, had developed very fast-track reskilling methods to move, for example, employees, skilled employees from airports and logistics in airports that remain idle during the COVID period to, for example, healthcare workers or logistics and food supply chains, where the need was much greater. Then after, third element is from identification of the needs to designing and implementing of solutions, reskilling solutions, again, together with the local players. That seems trivial, but it is very important because it depends how these reskilling programs are done and what is their impact. And we see now the most successful cities targeting the so-called end-to-end reskilling programs, meaning we don't just design and implement ad hoc reskilling programs, but we practically accompany people that have higher possibility to succeed in these reskilling programs through the reskilling and until job placement in the places where new needs exist. I would again mention Amsterdam, the House of Skills, very successful initiative in this matchmaking and then accompanying people through matchmaking and reskilling to job placement. Then the last element here is monitoring what's happening, monitoring, adjusting the programs continuously, because as we talk, skills needs are changing. We spoke very much about the digital in this one, but as many speakers mentioned, the green transition takes new skills. We do not have all these new skills. This will need new reskilling, but also resilience, social inclusiveness. What sort of skills we need to indeed embrace and include all people and all citizens in the cities. So continuous monitoring, assessing, and adjusting the reskilling programs. And last but not least, funding is of the essence. Nothing could happen without the right funding. And there, I would say there is a lot of funding available from, especially for the European Union, from European initiatives, especially the Next Generation EU 750 billion. A lot of that will be dedicated to reskilling, but also private investments, collaboration with the private sector are important to put investments where higher impact will be. With this, I would have much more examples to share with you, but I know time is of essence, and I would thank you again for the opportunity, Eddie.
Thank you, Dana. And your Intelligent Cities report is a good read. If anyone wants to go online, have a look for it. It's got lots of good local stories and some really inspiring examples. Again, thanks for kind of closing the circle on some of the kind of key things we've talked about today. And this is all obviously work in progress. We don't have a nice and neat set of answers, but we're all certainly going in the right direction, I think. I'm going to bring Karen in very shortly because as ever, we're about to be beaten by the clock. But I can see on my chat bar here that in terms of the poll we asked you about the challenges. So the three top challenges you identified were, first was the weakness in foresighting. So difficulties in knowing what's coming down the tracks was the biggest challenge you identified, interestingly. Second one was something else we've talked about, was a lack of flexibility in the supply chains, the skill supply chains. So the problems the providers have to position themselves and to be reactive and responsive to what's going on and what we need in the labour market. And the third one, something in fact which Stephen picked up on, is just insufficient incentives for workers. So why should I? And that comes back to messaging. It comes back to the whole bigger picture communication stuff. So really interesting to get your feedback on that. So thank you so much. You've asked us lots of good questions. I can see in the chat bar here the most important dimensions of the local successful local ecosystem. Why do SMEs not train more, and how can we help them? I'd love to bring Martina in on that if we had more time, but sadly we're going to run out of road shortly. I have just got time to invite Karen, our keynote listener, to come back in and maybe share a couple of very brief reflections, Karen, before we wrap up this session anyway.
Great. Well, thanks, Eddie, and thanks to all of you, because we'd really love to continue on, actually. I think it's a shame we're cut a little bit on time. So maybe just a few thoughts. So first, I heard a lot about partnerships, pathways, and people. And a sort of underlying, I couldn't find another P word to talk about data. So, so we'll talk about data as underpinning all of those. But on the partnership side, I mean, I think what really struck me was, you know, just how are we better able to make this happen and meet the needs if we're not better linked with businesses? And so I think that these local partnerships and the cities that are stepping up, like Dana described, are going to be really the future, because that's where stuff happens. That's where we know what clusters, like we heard about the ICT cluster in Barcelona with 50% growth in some of those ICT jobs in just 2 years. So a lot of work on the partnerships also with the small firms, including human resource departments. And I thought that was a really interesting point about how much we need to work together to better identify exactly what are the skills that we're looking for. And I know in the Harvard Business Review this week, there was a special article in particular about how we're shifting maybe more towards looking at skills as opposed to traditional degrees, especially in the middle skill job space, and how we can get better information to do that. So a lot on the role of these partnerships that I think we need to beef up. A second on pathways, and really just a lot of talk about what are the ways that we can do a better job on these pathways, the career guidance for future jobs, the better data on foresight, how do we transition from one sector to another? And I know that there was some mention, some of these transitions. I know a lot of folks who are maybe working on as flight attendants, then transitioning to healthcare, for example, in some countries and things like that. And so making these pathways work and understanding how you move from one to the other is another critical element. And some of those are maybe more general, and some of those are going to be really place specific. And then on the people-centered, I think we heard a lot of great points about that. And the human side, what are the unique selling points of people in the way that we produce goods and services? And also just that it's not just about jobs. It's about jobs that have a link with identity, that have a link with communities. And so these impacts go much above and beyond any individual. And I think this, and I think Ron also raised the issue of it's jobs plus coaching or other services. It's not just about placement, and that we need to really think about people in a holistic way, in the way that we're supporting all of these transitions. And also the types of people, who are we missing when we're doing all of these different kinds of efforts? And I think, on the data front, this is something that the OECD also will be continuing to contribute across the LEAD program and others, because this is really where we can inform all of these different decisions. And one of the big challenges is about how to get the right information locally. And this is, hopefully you'll join tomorrow when we have a discussion more in detail on some of these in particular data items. So I'll stop there just to thank everybody as well. But lots of great material for us as we take forward our work on supporting skills development, working with SMEs, working with the local partnerships, working with cities, and helping national governments understand what they can do to make the job easier for these local partnerships.
Thanks a lot, Karen. Not easy boiling all that down, but you did it brilliantly. So thanks a lot for summarizing so well in your role as our keynote listener today. Thanks a lot to our panelists, not only for their contributions, but also where you've been jumping in to answer some of the questions in the chat, which is being relayed back to the audience. So again, thanks a lot for jumping in and doing that. We could carry this on for a long time. Sadly, they're going to pull the plug on us, so we're going to have to stop. There's a short break now, the 16:45. There's a final session today on preparing Gen Z or Gen Z for the jobs of today and tomorrow. So stick with us for that. The conversation we have kickstarted today will continue in the coming days. So if you want a bit more and you want to dive a bit more deeply, stay with us, check the program. We look forward to seeing you. And thanks so much for your interactive inputs. And finally, thanks again to our panelists and to those behind the scenes in the OECD who have kept this thing on the screens today. So you've all done a great job, and have a nice evening, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks very much. Okay, all the best now. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the OECD Local Skills Week. My name is Rokas Markunas. I'm a policy manager at Business at OECD. And today I'll be moderating the session called Preparing Generation Z for the Jobs of Today and Tomorrow. To help us answer this question and to navigate the challenges that the young are facing in today's labor market, we have a very distinguished panel of 7 speakers. And I know that we have a very limited time, so we'll do our best to try to accommodate all of them and to share to make sure that we can listen and they can share their experience and the challenges that they see that youth are facing in the labor market. This session will also explore what cities are doing to ensure young people can excel in local labor markets. And we'll also try to assess the quality of those jobs and how the young people can influence these developments, particularly in the context of digitalization and globalization, which have sparked radical shifts in how people live and work. And the COVID-19 pandemic has further accelerated these trends. So to accommodate all of our speakers, today we will divide the session in 3 parts. We'll start with identifying the skills for youth. What skills need and gaps does the labor market currently sees and face, and that youth should address first? We'll then try to unravel these in exploring the role of stakeholder engagement for youth and what can different stakeholders act and do to make sure that the youth can address the challenges that we will identify. And then lastly, we will see what are the youth experiences in the labor market, the challenges seen firsthand from the field, and we'll finish off with that. So to begin with, we'll have 2 speakers help us identify what skills, needs, and gaps young people currently face and ways to address this challenge. To help us, we have Ms. Raquel Gil Arroyo, the Commissioner for Employment and Policies Against Precariousness of Barcelona City Council. And Raquel has developed her activity focusing on advocacy and citizenship rights, equality and social policies from different approaches. Currently working as a commissioner for the promotion, employment, and policies against the precariousness in Barcelona City Council, she works together with Barcelona Activa, developing strategies to promote quality employment in the city. Hi, Raquel, good to see you.
Hi,
and also joining here, we have Ms. Renita Jain, who's a senior associate at Annie EKC Foundation. And there, Renita helps manage a portfolio aimed at helping low-income families and young people to develop the experiences, skills, and networks needed to succeed in today's economy. Prior to joining the Casey Foundation, Renita was the Associate Director of Research at the Aspen Economic Opportunities Program, where she led applied research and capacity building projects that support the development of innovative approaches to improving jobs and economic opportunities. Hi, Renita. We would like to begin with you, Raquel, first. You work specifically with professional reskilling through innovation and in learning tools, artificial intelligence, and quality care. You also work to improve working conditions in Barcelona through labor rights centers and other initiatives. Could you tell us more about the skills needs of youth as well as young people's experience on the labor market as observed working in Barcelona's labor market?
Thanks for having us today and for all the information we're getting to this through this meeting. First of all, I would like to start making a statement that it's quite known, maybe obvious, but I think that it has to be done if we talk about young people and labor market. Young people only has in common the age they have, the age they are moving on. But they are very different profiles among young people, and that means we need to improve different solutions as well. I would like to point just like 3 main points of view. And sorry, but I'm hearing myself all the time. I don't know if because you can hear me fine. Oh.
Yes, all is well, Raquel.
I will do like that. Otherwise, I just hear myself, and it's quite annoying. I was saying that if we talk about young people and labor market, I think there are like 3 main points we will have to think about: how they access to the labor market, how they maintain themselves, and how can they develop a career, and finally how we attract or maintain talent. And you will see that the 3 points, I think they are very connected in the files I'm working in. If we talk about the access to the labor market, We have to take into account the previous situation the young people come from, and I think Ranita is going to talk a lot more about that, but we have some exclusion that comes first in some of the problems we have also with the skills. Then we shouldn't forget about career guidance. We have some mismatching in the labor market and the young people, sometimes coming for a bad choice or for a lack of information before they took their professional experiences or decisions. We are working with some other stakeholders in the city in a program that we call Professional Life, trying to solve that from the schools and with the schools and trying to be part of this guidance. There is also a lot to talk about the formal education and how the formal education is still very traditional and sometimes is not giving the answers to our young people and to the labor market. We are still learning in a very old way, and we are still having some educational path that has no relation at all with the market, the economy, and if we do a melting pot with all these aspects, that can show us all these problems with the access to the education. Then about how people, once is inside the market, can make a career and how we can use the skills in that. Here is where we will talk about this reskilling and this upskilling that has been going in the different sessions before the one we are having now. And I think it's important because we are in a moment with a lot of transitions going on. The world has changed very fast. We were just pointing some aspects of the future of work, and because of this pandemic and the acceleration of a lot of changes during this period of time, we will have to say that the future is now, and a lot of things that we were thinking, how are we going to arrange that, they are happening. And that has a direct impact with the skills, because we haven't been able to go as fast as the labor market and the young people we need. And that's very something that we have to worry about with the old people as well, how we manage to reskill workers that belong to economy parts that are not having the same opportunity that they used to have. But we should be more worried that the young people, in most cases, they are just studying now, or they are finishing their studies, they are requiring this reskilling to make them more suitable to have a path career. And for that, in the city of Barcelona, we've been trying to help during this period of pandemic and accelerate some of these changes. And we've been working with the educational consortium we have in the city to try to make a lot of reskilling short-term studies to help the people to see other opportunities in the labor market, to see how from their backgrounds they can jump into another sector of work by learning these programs. And in some cases, they have helped some young people as well to find this career guidance that they like. During the last year, we managed to make more than 5,000 different participation in courses and studies from this reskilling program. We are very proud of that, and that it's been complemented with a program that already was going on with the digitalization, that it's our IT Academy, that it's helping young people and not so young people, but it's mainly focused on young people to get themselves a career in the IT sector and in digitalization sector. And we have the compromise from the government in the city to improve that for the next 2 years and arrive to more than 3,000 young persons through this program. We also will have the opportunity to hear one of the programs we are also having in the city, that it's called 42, that I think Inés Torres is gonna explain us later, and so I won't go further into that. And finally, I just wanted to talk about the talent. During today's journey, we've been hearing a lot about how cities work for talent and how talent it's become the petrol of this century. But at the same time, we have a lot of local talent who needs to go abroad because they don't find an answer in the labor market for the preparation, especially in the case of Barcelona and I would say the whole country in Spain, because of the working conditions they can find. The people who has is highly profile, sometimes not so highly profiled others, but that can find better working conditions outside of our city or our country, and that's something if talent is the new petrol, we cannot allow ourselves to have a leak in our talent. And that's happening also in the city. And we have been running some programs to try to stop that. There is a lot more, but I know there's a lot of people that needs to work. So I will stop it here and thanks again.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Very interesting insights indeed. And I think it's a perfect opening of our session today. The sentence that you have started your intervention is, young people only have the age that is common in between them. And I think it's definitely going to be a motto for a lot of campaigns that our event is going to inspire the private sector and other stakeholders to follow by. And indeed, what you say, the future is now, and not being able to keep up with the changes of the labor market really amplifies the need of all these reskilling and upskilling programs. And the core behind this little subsection of our session today is identifying the skills for tomorrow and how can we engage young people and showcase them what do they need, what do we need from them, and vice versa. And now, Renita, the Annie Casey Foundation has taken initiatives such as generation work to help employers understand the specific needs of young people in the world of work. May you please tell us more about the foundation's initiatives and how they help employers best reach their youth engagement goals?
Yes, thank you. And Raquel, it was so helpful to hear you describe the experiences for young people in Barcelona. There's, I think, so much alignment with, the needs that we're seeing for young people here in the United States, as well as some of the strategies that we are exploring as well. So Rokas, just to take a step back, for those who aren't familiar, so at the Casey Foundation, we have a series of investments that support education and employment attainment for young adults, typically older young adults. And the initiative Generation Work that you just referenced, I think, is one of our major initiatives to support the connection to employment for young adults ages 18 to 29 to really meaningful employment opportunities in the United States. And I think a couple of things that would be helpful to keep in mind about the initiative is that this work of the initiative has explicit focus on improving the employment outcomes for young people of color from low-income families. There's very much so an equity focus to the work, because when we look at the data and the experiences, we know that young people of color in the United States have had significant disparities with respect to education and employment. So a group of practitioners in the Generation Work communities, they're working across their local communities in the US to find solutions to change the way that both the public and the private sector are preparing young people for jobs. And I think, thinking about that work and how that looks like in terms of how to help employers understand what are the specific needs of young people at work. I think one of the main things that we've learned is that the importance of centering this work with the needs of young people and really recognizing that young people today, they really need jobs that serve multiple purposes. They need jobs that will address their immediate income needs, but they also need jobs that offer, stable employment opportunities in this fishery market with predictable hours so that they can pursue whatever education they may be pursuing at the same time or other personal responsibilities they may have in their life. Particularly for young people who are, on the younger end and haven't had many work experiences or positive ones, really having jobs that support quality supervision and mentorship on the job, opportunities for training and advancement, knowing that not all of this is going to occur in a classroom. So I think, centering that work with employers to really think about what are the needs of young people first, is we found to be really important. And then, you know, the practitioners that we work with in the US, they really then take this to translate it to say that to employers, like these jobs and these types of jobs are really not beneficial only for young workers, but they're really good business practices. It's going to be ultimately really good for the business bottom line and for your workforce, right? You're going to see improved employee retention, improved workplace culture, employee satisfaction, better delivery of products and services. So yes, it does take practice changes and culture change and work to create these types of environments. But at the same time, I think, you know, showing, especially in this market that we're in with the pandemic and hopefully cross our fingers recovery, you know, really thinking through also how, you know, what does that mean now too, in terms of like, there's this window of opportunity to work with employers in a different way, to work more deeply, to really think about how to structure employment opportunities in a way that, you know, really meet the needs of young workers. And so in the chat, we could share a resource that we developed through funding at NEKC Foundation. It's a framework that describes ways that workforce practitioners, which could include education and training providers, as well as other intermediaries, a framework for how they can engage with employers to really cultivate these equitable and inclusive employment opportunities. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of them, but just to highlight a few, I think, you know, a couple of strategies that really have risen to the top of our learning is really to, you know, to be intentional and explicit and cultivate these connections between employers and young adults. You know, this has really been impactful in shifting the mindsets and the biases that employers may have about young adults, particularly young adults of color who may not have followed a traditional career path or linear path that they have themselves. And then also, you know, really working with employers to help them better understand what young workers' needs are and how to meet them where they are. And then another, I think, impactful strategy we have is that we found is that, you know, really to leverage like local political and financial incentives to really influence employer practice change. So to use things in the US, such as public wage subsidies or public benefit agreements to really talk about and negotiate the expectations for work or inclusive hiring agreements and other ways to bring those levers into the work.
Thank you, Renita. Indeed, everything starts locally, and this is one of the underpinnings between our core of the whole session today is how can youth and local communities work together more better. And I think what you have identified and through the work of the foundation, finding the windows of opportunities in local communities can help them to create programs which can inspire higher tier programs that have a wider even impact. And the more we have of this, I think the better reach and the engagement we can have and inspire other actions. I have a follow-up question to both of you, to Raquel and Renita, but just wanted to mention to all the participants listening to us today that if you have a very hot question, please make sure to post that in the question box and through the platform, even though we're on a very tight schedule, but hopefully we can take in one or two hot questions. But now to the both speakers, and Raquel, maybe we can start with your answer. As you engage with young people, what skills, needs, and gaps are they currently facing? And how could policy best help bridge the gap concerning both labor and companies? What role do training institutions and companies have in this context?
I'll try to make a fast answer to that complicated question you just made, but I would say the public sector has the obligation of guarantee that these gaps don't exist anymore, or at least that there are ways and opportunities to solve them. And to do that, I think one thing the public sector can do is rethink also and redesign some of the processes, because for being the guarantee, sometimes we make everything very complicated. And in a world that is changing that fast, we need also to have solutions and answers that go as fast as possible without losing the goal in it. And we can do that, but reorganizing the way we answer, and also by constructing alliances with other stakeholders. And I think that's something we've been trying in the city, and it's working quite fine, making alliances with other administrations as well, not only the local level, but the regional or the metropolitan level as well. And then also with the private sector. It's very important that we work together with the universities, with the companies, with the schools, with the social sector as well, to try to find the fastest and the more clear solutions for the young people. And as I was saying before, if you ask me where are the skills can be or the gaps they are having us with the skills has to do with the digitalization, but also the use of technology. It's not only about how they can use their mobile phone. All the young people know how to use the mobile phone, and probably how to have a seminar like this and how to make some things in digital. But then there are also some technology that needs to be incorporated in the traditional sectors as well. And here there is much skills that we probably had to work about. And also, as I said before, there is some problems with the working conditions that we have to arrange in order to make some of the places that are asking for more workers to be able to find the talent they are searching, and also to make sure that the young people is being able to have a life project through their experience, through their job, and also to contribute and to continue to develop themselves.
Thank you, Raquel. Renita, same question for you.
Sure. I think I'll also try to do a short answer, but it's a very big question. I think, I don't want to repeat everything that Raquel just shared, because I think it's all very valid. I think one thing to add that I could add to this discussion is that, really engaging the private sector in a way to bring them into this work as well, and to make sure that policies that engage them are really centered in equity. So, if there's things like in the United States, we talk often about, encouraging inclusive hiring practices and seeing that as part of the inclusive economic development. But, if there's policies that we pass, such as like passing wage subsidies or other types of tax credits or things, is really to make sure that employers are not creating a second class of jobs or a second set of jobs to say that this is okay for this set of workers or for these workers, but to really, be very clear and mindful about what are the parameters of these jobs, not only in terms of, what should the wages or benefits be associated with them, but also what are the parameters around, like what expectations do we have for employers around how workers are supported and treated at work? What is the safety of these opportunities? How are they protected as well? So all of these things kind of come into play to show that the private sector has a responsibility in this work as well to, as providers and different education and training providers are really thinking about ways to support this connection to work, I think also having visibility around what the job opportunities are and what they entail. So helping young workers and job developers, so people that work with them, understand the nature of available employment opportunities, pay, benefits, time off, scheduling is very important. What do the scheduling practices look like? But all these types of things that people don't often know when they're navigating the labor market. And it's almost like they're throwing Jello at a wall to see what will stick, right? Like to have this visibility and have this information at hand, it can be really powerful.
Very interesting, Renita. Thank you very much. And actually, both of your interventions are answering remotely answering a lot of questions that we're getting in the chat, actually. And this involves one of the biggest challenges that employers face, what are the challenges the young people face. And it's very interesting. And indeed, it all starts locally, as you both have mentioned, identifying the windows of opportunity, adding visibility, understanding what is needed. Well, you both of you, Renita and Raquel, have a perfect transition to our second mini session on stakeholder engagement for youth. Thank you both very much for your remarks. And as you have identified, we need private sector to support. We need all alliances with stakeholders who can showcase, raise visibility, and to have discussions like the ones we have today. And to navigate this and to achieve better labor market opportunities for youth, linking students with companies and assisting them professionally is crucial, which is what we will now explore. And we have two speakers to help us identify what is the role of stakeholder cooperation in promoting better opportunities for young people. For that, we have Ines Temes-Fuertes, who is a director of 42 Madrid at Foundation Telefónica. And Ines has over 15 years of experience working on digital projects. She specialized in educational innovation and how technology improves learning experiences. At Telefónica, she has been leading digital education and training projects for universities and within the corporate environment. Currently, she leads 42 Madrid, a coding academy with innovative and disruptive methodology. Hi, Ines, good to have you. And we also have Mr. Gabriel Petrus, who's the Deputy Director, Global Partnerships and Development at the International Chamber of Commerce, where Gabriel's role includes driving global campaigns to mobilize business on advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, strengthening communities, and particularly youth through entrepreneurship programs with focus on reskilling, digitalization, and trade integration. Gabriel is also an associate professor of international law at the University of Paris, a member of the steering committee of the ICC UN Economic Commission for Africa Center of Entrepreneurship. Hi, Gabriel. We would like to begin with you, Ines, and dive straight into the topic. The project that you are leading is a groundbreaking initiative, I have to say, that changes the rules of learning. 42 Madrid is a corporate campus providing tuition-free courses to students without professional or flexible hours. Are there any insights and takeaways that you could share from this campus and what this means for other companies who also explore the possibility of taking such initiatives?
Thank you for the invitation to participate in this panel. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the project. At Telefónica Foundation, we have been committed to education and training for employment for more than 20 years. So in this ecosystem, we launched 42 because we wanted to offer young people development opportunities. 42 is a coding school, and we opened it in September 2019. And after 2 years, we have trained more than 2,000 students in the most innovative programming campus in the world. The methodology is based on peer-to-peer learning with no books, as you said before, no teachers, in a gamified environment in which the student is the center, is making decisions about who to learn with, at what pace, and what to study. They are really the center of the decisions. 42 is free for all the students, and the only requirement to access is to be over 18 years old. Therefore, for many people, it offers new opportunities for reskilling. At 42, we prepare students for the new labor market, bearing in mind that we don't know many of the jobs in the coming years. We are committed to technical training in areas such artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, big data, and all the IT's experience. But we also work on the soft skills. This is very important in 42 because it's not only an IT academy. It's a philosophy of being different in the labor market. For us, it's key teamwork, tolerance to frustration, the effort, creativity, and it's really, really important, and it's what the companies are demanding. we are also connected with many companies, trying to understand what really they need to adapt our curriculum to their needs. Our experience from a corporate point of view, because we are a Telefonica Foundation, but we are in the heart of Telefonica, is that we are helping to create opportunities for many people by connecting the companies with the youth ecosystem. This is part of our DNA as a Telefonica Foundation. In these 2 years, we have learned many things, but initiatives such as 42 help us to connect the labor market with the young people. In addition, being very close to companies help us to know the profiles that the labor market are demanding and trying to adapt our curriculum to these needs. In our case, in 42, there is a great diversity. The average age is 27, but we have many nationalities, profiles, and social context. And we deeply respect this diversity. We also have 100% employability. And we think it's part of our methodology that is based on the self-leadership. 42 is located at the corporate headquarters of Telefonica. So this physical closeness is also close to the company technological and digital ecosystem. This also allows students to learn more about Telefonica, the processes, how we work, what we need. And this relation it's easy when you want to hire someone, for example, because also the student and also the company has been many times matching in hackathons, in trainings, and in many opportunities to know each other. So this is very important, and for those companies who want to open this kind of initiatives, we think it's very important to be very close to the youth and very close to the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines. I actually am lost of words, to be frank. It is, it encompasses everything that we aim to talk about today. How to put the needs of the young people, how can companies interact and showcase what skills needs are needed, how to provide upskilling opportunities, how to have direct exposure to the labor market, to the company, how actual working environment is looking like. And I think 42 Madrid is exactly all of that. And to talk a little bit more about such initiatives, the ICC and BIAC together as well has joined the Stand by Youth initiative of the OECD. And Gabrielle, the initiative is, as you all you really know, is aiming to share best practice and raise awareness of the way businesses can engage young people, such as the example that Ines just talked about us. Could you tell us more specifically what other practices firms can put in place to help young people?
Thank you, Rakas, and thanks to ECJ colleagues for the invitation. Good to see you, Ines, and very nice. I was actually listening to colleagues about what are the existing programs led by private sector, such as Telefonica Foundation and others. And I think we all should recognize, and we did recognize when we launched the Stand by Youth campaign, that the private sector can do much more. I think the first conclusion when we were actually planning the campaign to inspire more companies to hire more young people, especially after the effects of COVID on youth globally in developing countries and developed countries, is the assumption that there's still space to advance. And I think Ines mentioned that we should assess what skills are needed, or what are skills are needed by the private sector, but we should also listen to the youth and listen to them and understand what kind of work and what kind of activities they're looking to employ their times in the future. This is really important because we should any policies looking at the youth should be develop from an horizontal perspective. We should look at them and talk to them and engage with them. And that's what we're doing when we launched the ICC Centers of Entrepreneurship. And this campaign is Stand By Youth campaign is part of our work as well. We have 8 hubs across the globe. The first one was launched in Turkey, the second in Beirut, 4 hubs in Africa, in Kenya, Casablanca, Lagos, and Accra. And the next one's being launched in Latin America and Colombia this week, and in Indonesia as well, we have a presence. And for us, it's also important, that's the second observation I'd like to bring to my colleagues and to the discussion. I really like what Raquel said in the beginning, that the concept of youth is really diverse, both policymakers and corporate leaders, they should have a diverse perspective on whenever doing policies or implementing programs. So big corporates like, of course, Fundación Telefónica, IBM, other companies that are looking to train young people on the 4th industrial revolution, they're doing a lot of work on that. But in developing countries, there's still a lot of room for improvement. There's a very interesting program I'd like to share with you as well in Kenya. Actually, it's not only in Kenya, but also in Syria, in Iraq, and in Turkey, working with young people facing difficult job prospects from poor communities and also refugees, where we actually outsource digital jobs opportunities from all over the globe to those communities. This is a program led by the World Food Program, and via the ICC, we're working, supporting them on that. And the companies from all over the globe, they can outsource their job opportunities on digital work for those young people. And actually, I think one way for us to do is always to bring in the trainings with the concrete job opportunities. I think that's the best scheme we could have as an example. And this program does exactly that. The trainings, they're all associated with concrete job opportunities. So young people who are being trained by those in the context of this initiative, they know they will have a job after they conclude the training. Just a last but not least observation, in the same sense of recognizing that we must and we should do more as private sector, and we're looking to do that. We should be looking at win-wins, and it's all about creating the right environment for more companies, including SMEs, to step in and provide more trainings for the youth. Because at the end of the day, if we're able to reskill people, and again, there's a very interesting data from the WEF saying that 52% of the employees all over the globe, they will be reskilled until the end of this year. If we're able to actually have a particular look at the youth, we're actually creating a positive environment where everybody will win. The private sector, the youth, because we will have more high-skilled people, we'll have more creativity. And again, working with the youth is about working with creative people, with entrepreneurs. And I think that's the particularity when we are making policies with the youth. It's about people who can actually teach us about doing things differently. Thanks, Ruckus.
Thank you, Gabriel. And both you and Ines actually answered my second question that I wanted to ask you is to learn why businesses should be an advocate for young people and how to showcase that this can be a win-win situation for both young people in the private sector. And you have exactly identified that the concept of youth is diverse and we need diverse solutions indeed. But however, I then would like to deep into a little bit deeper. I think that all of the participants here today can agree and understand the value of the initiatives that both the ICC and Telefónica Foundation are doing. And it's a very clear positive outcome out of this and what we get. But then a follow-up question to both of you that I would have is, how do we encourage other businesses? How do we raise visibility, as Renita in the session before said that we need visibility for this. We need to showcase why is it important. And well, how can ICC, how can Telefónica Foundation, how can other businesses learn of this and see, and how can we inspire them to take initiatives as such or join initiatives, etc. Ines.
Thank you. Well, I think that those companies that bet on young people are really in the strategy right. So we are living in a historic moment in humanity. For years, digitalization has been causing great social changes, and we are now facing new challenges and also new opportunities, of course. During 2020, we had witnesses a digital acceleration that, as my colleagues said before, affects the labor market. We see how companies demand digital profiles that the education system does not always manage to cover. And in this context, alternative learning methodologies as 42 appear. Therefore, it's more necessary than ever to train our young people in the ability to adapt these changes already with the evolution of the technology. From companies, we think we have the responsibility to continue supporting young people after this big crisis, so that they need to understand these new challenges, these new changes, and this new labor market that we try to train them and to prepare them for this challenge. So it's our responsibility. That's how we afford 42. It's true that 42 is a project from Telefonica Foundation, but we are very close to the business, the Telefonica business. So it's a responsibility for all of us to make to be closer and to mix the mixed ecosystem of youth people with the business ecosystem. In addition, the private sector has to connect with this young talent. There is a lot of talent that sometimes is not. They are not discovered by themselves, and with this type of opportunities, these young people can open a small window to the future and to this labor market. Together, we think that together with the public administration, as the colleague from Barcelona has said before, to generate more opportunities, it's our responsibility, and it's a moment right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines. Gabriel, I turn to you for the same question.
I think Ines answered it brilliantly, and I'd like to piggyback on one of the concepts she shared about having the companies more closer to young people. And I think we can use technology to that. And one of the ideas we're discussing now with the Oecd and other partners is how we could use the Stand By Youth campaign to create a global platform where private sector could easily highlight their current programs supporting the youth into the website in a simple word map where you could click in the country, you could click in Spain and look at the projects led by Telefonica. You could click in Brazil and see projects led by Brazilian companies, and in Kenya, the same thing. So again, technology can really bridge us, and we should use that very, very closely to share best practices. Again, this is a no-brainer. Sharing good ideas is good for humanity, is good for the planet, is good for the youth, is good for the companies, is good for everybody. The other thing is about the metaverse. This is a quite new thing. Everybody's talking about that. But look, the metaverse, at the end of the day, we will maybe have a chance to help developing countries facing difficulties in terms of infrastructure, in terms of physical infrastructure, like schools or training centers. And if we have an open source and free of charge, of course, metaverse platform that could benefit people in the youth from developing countries to have easy access to training programs on digital skills, that will be also a game changer. So again, let's look at the new technologies and how we can use them to really bridge the private sector with the youth.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, and very nice to learn also of new concepts today that are not really discussed in a formal setting yet about the metaverse. And well, hopefully next year we can all discuss and share experiences all connected with virtual headsets. Maybe not. We'll see if the benefits of that. Thank you very much to both of you. And indeed, jumping back, what I noticed the trend as we already had 4 speakers in our session is there's a lot of going back between the speakers. We're mentioning what Raquel said, mentioning what Renita said, and now this really encompasses and very nicely summarized the second mini session, the stakeholder engagement, stakeholder cooperation. It is essential. It is essential, and what Gabrielle you mentioned is that young people is the source of creativity, and what you just said as well, that companies that have young people on board, they have the strategy forward, the good strategy that everyone should follow. To expand on this and to learn more about the topic in general, we will now move to a small mini session titled The Youth Experiences in the Labor Market. So thank you very much, Inez, Gabrielle. I hope that we will have time to jump back again to have some extra questions to you and to Raquel and Renita towards the end of the session. But now we will discuss the importance to understand the needs and aspirations of young people. And to give us perspective of labor market participation directly from youth, we have 3 great panelists joining us today. Firstly, we have Ms. Jacqueline Tanzer, who is a World Skills Champion Trust Regional Representative from WorldSkills, where she works together with a group of 10 other competitors to expand the world skills movements and promote the importance of skills. Jacqueline is also an entrepreneur running her own graphic design business. Hi, Jacqueline. Also joining us is Andrea Bidnerova, Erasmus Plus School Business Development Officer, the European Federation for Intercultural Learning. And she currently works as an Erasmus Plus School Programs Development Officer, where she coordinates intercultural learning opportunities for secondary school pupils, with a special focus on youth with fewer opportunities and teachers. And Andrea is also a member of the Youthwise Network, being part of the first cohort of it. Hi, Andrea. And lastly, joining us today is Miguel Moreira Hernandez, who is a board member of Barcelona's Youth Council, and he works as an administrator in Peace Education Association. He started his engagement in the youth associative movement during high school through a student association defending public education, and continued that during in university. In Barcelona's Youth Council, he represents the Association of Progressive Students and is the point person for projects related to formal education and youth emancipation. Hi, Miguel. Great to have all of you here, and let's dive straight into it. And Jacqueline, I will start with you. And reading your history, your experiences, I've noticed that you followed a path of vocational education, and you, in your work, in your professional work, you aim to showcase its benefits as part of what you're doing. Could you tell us what opportunities vocational educational training provided you in particular in the labor market?
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Ruckus, and thanks to the OECD for the opportunity to speak on this panel today. So in my experience, when people think of vocational education, they often think of it as a second-class choice, a dead end. But let me take you on a little journey, my journey, to show you that it's not. So I went to a vocational school to become a graphic designer. And one day, when an opportunity to take part in a competition came up, I decided to go for it, to say yes. This was in 2012, competed at the national level, which got me to compete at Euroskills 2014, where I thought this opportunity would end. I said yes many more times, got to compete at WorldSkills Sao Paulo in 2015 and represent my country at the first international Tibet Youth Forum at WorldSkills Abu Dhabi in 2017. And now I'm a representative for Europe on the WorldSkills Champions Trust. And this allows me to work with 10 other past competitors, as you mentioned. And we try to promote the importance of skills and demonstrate that vocational education can be, or better should be, considered a first-class choice. And I had long started to realize that opportunities don't end, they multiply. My involvement with the skills movement was a bit of a fortunate coincidence too. And the junctions on everyone's path will look very different. and might have nothing to do with competitions at all. And this has actually got nothing and everything to do with my career. It's not that I got an amazing job offer out of a competition or anything like that, but it just taught me how to approach work life. You have to say yes to opportunities, even when they scare you or if they mean additional work. And sometimes you'll have to create opportunities because they don't just always come up themselves. Either way, it is a choice for vocational education not to be at that end. I started a job as a graphic designer for a grocery chain after school. And while I was happy for some time and learning new things, at some point I just started to feel stuck. So I took different junctions, tried university for a while, did some volunteer work in Africa, figuring out which was the right way forward. And eventually I decided to set up my own business. And this hasn't been the easiest path I could have taken, because working a 9-to-5 has definitely a lot of advantages compared to that too. But for me, this has been the best path of further education. That's how I see it anyway. It's not just a job for me. I've learned so much being self-employed, not just technically, but particularly about myself and about people, about attitude, problem solving, time management, all sorts of soft skills really to keep a business running, but that are helpful in all sorts of situations. And if I ever decide to take a different path, which I might one day, my journey gave me the confidence to be certain that I could navigate the course. So having followed the path of vocational education and having met many people who have done the same, I can tell people for a fact that it's not a dead end and it can be anything you make of it.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Very interesting story, very inspiring to hear. And creating opportunities for yourself and having youth and giving them the chances to do that, maybe that should be the focus also. Not only what companies can do, but what can young people do themselves to create opportunities for them? How can we support them? Maybe then we can have young people more ready for the labor market with the right skills. Maybe that's something to think about as well as we move later on. And it's a great transition to Andrea and to your experience, where you have dedicated almost 10 years of your life for volunteering and working in fields of education and youth. And in this context, maybe as well, you could tell us more about what kind of skills and qualities young people have, or following up on what Jacqueline said, what opportunities do the young people have at their hands to develop and find to find quality jobs?
Thank you, Rokas, and I'm really delighted to be here with you today. And it's been so great to hear all the other speakers and their contributions. And I'm not only here today to represent myself, but also the young people that I've worked with, volunteered with over the years, and also my fellow peers from the OECD Youthwise Pilot cohort. Over the years, my peers and I have experienced three main ways that eventually led us to our first full-time positions. And those are part-time jobs, internships, and volunteering. Many young people need to work alongside their studies, as it may be the only way they are able to afford it, especially if they're not studying in their hometown. Very often, the part-time job may not even correspond with our field of study, and we may be wondering, is this meaningful? Will it count for our work experience in the future? Many students tutor, and this kind of work is often one-to-one, paid right after in cash, ending up in not being formalized within an institution, which makes it fall into kind of a gray area. I'm almost sure that any young person that is watching today will agree with me that we are expected to have relevant prior working experience to be hired, but how can we gain this experience if we can't be hired without it? Employers should really look behind any relevant experience a young person has. Which brings me to my second point, internships. This is a great opportunity to gain practical experience and skills in one's field of study. Nowadays, there are quite numerous opportunities for a young person during and especially after their studies. But it is really striking to see how many of those opportunities, how many of those internships are unpaid. The number of hours and the task composition are often similar, if not identical, to a regular part-time or full-time job. Yet not only are these internships not paid, they are not remunerated in any way. Like a young person
should be just grateful for any kind of work, you know? And this results in the unpaid internships being accessible only to those with sufficient financial means. I have never been a regular intern myself because I couldn't afford not to be paid, but I have worked with several and those were luckily paid. Their work is absolutely indispensable to the functioning of so many organizations. Those young people are hungry to learn, they're really hardworking. However, even these paid internships can lead to another extreme, which is taking advantage of interns over hiring junior staff. In my home country, the Czech Republic, there is not really a big culture of internships, traineeships, but when I arrived in Belgium, where I currently live, it's the complete opposite. I can only tell you how many times I have heard of young people in Brussels going from one internship to another since they could not find an entry-level position. And last but not least, volunteering was a major part of my life, something that shaped both the personal and professional aspect of it. I volunteered for the largest volunteer student organization in Europe, Erasmus Student Network, which looked after exchange students in their new home country. Spanning across 7 years and covering the local, national, and international level of the organization, I gained a lot of skills such as teamwork, intercultural and diplomatic communication, public speaking, event coordination, or workshop facilitation. I'm 100% honest when I tell you that I benefit from this experience every single day. But when I started it on top of my studies and a part-time job, I wasn't sure whether it was useful. I did it because I genuinely enjoyed it. And so many of my peers are like that. They don't know whether volunteering counts towards work's experience. If so, whether it will be recognized by potential employers they apply to, but they also often don't know how to name the skills they gain while volunteering. I am already a millennial, but most of my fellow Youth Wife members are part of the Generation Z. I can tell you that I was in awe to see their maturity. They're so driven, curious, packed with soft skills, yet they're so frightened about their future, which was only exacerbated by the pandemic. I truly hope that with 2022 having been proclaimed the European Year of Youth by the European Commission, and youth being high on the agenda of the Italian presidency of the OECD Ministerial Council, young people will be part of the consultation process and will not only feed in when all the policies are ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Very interesting to learn, and different challenges than what we have heard before. Not being able to identify the skills that you acquired through volunteering indeed is a big issue and something that has not been touched upon. So it's very interesting to learn from you that. And it also turns a little bit back to what was addressed before, what Ines mentioned as a part of 42 Madrid is, apart from technical skills, soft skills are as important. And as you say, they can be mostly gained through experiences such as volunteering experiences. And maybe you'll also, another key takeaway from today's sessions will be how to identify that, how to showcase the soft skills that a young person has and how to put it in a valuable way so that employers can look at it and say, oh, wow, this person is definitely great and a great fit for us. Miguel, through your professional and volunteering experiences as well, you have had the chance to hear multiple success stories from young people. Could you tell us more about the impressions that you have had about the challenges young people have in their path to the labor market?
Thank you very much for inviting us as a Youth Council of Barcelona. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it's really common that when we talk about young people, we don't count with them, we don't listen to them, and for us, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here, representing and giving a young voice like mine into this debate that we're having. I also wanted to say that I really enjoyed the previous intervention, and I will relate a little bit my intervention with the things that Andrea said. Because as a youth council, of course, we work with young people and ourselves as different parts, the members of the board that we volunteer and we participate here, just because we want with all the rest of the workers of the council are of course young people. In general, we promote to contract young people, and we think that gives us the perspective on the youth politics that we need. At the same time, the rest of the associations that are members of the Barcelona's Youth Council works also with young people in both spaces, in the volunteering space and also in the working space. And that somehow gives us a perspective about how do we work as young people and how then can we succeed as youth people, that at the same time is not real. It's not real in the terms that it's not extended by the rest of the society. We're just a part that we have the luck that we have developed some skills, we have developed some relations between us, between the young people. We have associated ourselves to with others to create associations, and that gives us this perspective that not everyone can have. Of course, the question of how can we spend our time on our free time is related with the social capacity, with the economical limits that families and young people has. Myself, I have been president of the Students Association. I've been implied in the students movement since I was 15, and that is because I didn't have the necessity to work at the same time as I studied and other things like that. And that, in the end, it's something that's quite relevant when we have to face this kind of debate. When we talk about success in young people, we normally think that you have had good grades at the university, at the high school, or that you have a really good job. But we as Youth Council, as members that we try to approach the associative perspective into this issue, we also think that succession at the end is also to be part of a movement, to be part of association, to be part of something that implies more people, not just you, also the people that goes around you. And in considering the importance of this thing that we claim, we have developed a tool which is called in Catalan, of course, Posa't en Valor, which translated in English will be value yourself. We work with Fundació Ferrer i Guàrdia, with the Ferrer i Guàrdia Foundation, that can let you analyze your skills. This is skills that you have learned in the associative movement. This is skills that you may not that you were not searching for when a young person started to associate, but that you have learned during the process of participation. With this tool, at the end, what we try is to give these young people the capacity to face the interviews, to face the labor market with more security, analyzing which are the things that they learn, the skills that they have that can lead them to have a better job or the job that they want. At the same time, we would like this tool to be more developed, to be used also by the enterprises, by the business, to be something that can objectively be validated or evaluated by the enterprises on the searching for job on young people. Yeah, and that's all.
Thank you, Miguel. Very interesting to learn about that and to learn what also youth networks can do, the power of youth networks and youth. And actually, you're really jumping ahead of the question that I have for all three of you, to start with Jacqueline, maybe. In what ways can youth organizations and other not-for-profit organizations support local governments in developing youth education and employment systems that also meet the needs of the most vulnerable and marginalized young people? We have a lot of young people and with big aspirations in rural areas and markets who do not maybe have the straight path to the opportunities that have been discussed today. What do young people bring to the table as well as part of these youth networks, and how can they influence local markets? Jacqueline?
Thank you. I think I'd like to start with that last question, because for me that's so straightforward. Because young people, in my opinion, have to be included in any discussion about the future of work, because it's our future. And why would you try to shape it without us making a contribution? And all the seniors involved in those conversations are essential. I see that because, I mean, they might be the ones who are in a position to bring matters forward. But I don't want to say that they don't care or understand, but if you're still in education, or you've just come out of it, and you know what is relevant, because you've literally just experienced it, and youth will always bring a fresh perspective to the table. And as for the first question, I think that links back to what Raquel said at the beginning, that the only thing youth has in common is their age, and that you have to really emphasize here local and vulnerable and marginalized. So not all youth is having the same experience. In fact, everyone's having a completely different experience and having completely different challenges. And so we have to ensure diversity among our representatives, and especially probably in global organizations. And those organizations then need to listen, like Miguel said, like actively listen to what young people have to say. And that's as much to a disadvantaged person in a poor country and a privileged person in a rich country, because they will both face issues and they will both have to be solved.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Andrea, same question for you.
Sorry, microphone. Yes, obviously I agree with what Jacqueline just said, 100%. And also, again, based on my own experience too, youth organizations and nonprofit organizations are the ones that have firsthand experience with working with young people, especially the marginalized ones, whether we talk about, as you mentioned, young people from rural areas, young people with disabilities, young people that are not in education, training, or employment, but they should be a trusted partner, which means they need to have access to public funds as well, which is not often the case. And sometimes, let's say, more traditional organizations such as scouting movements and organizations that go way, way back in the past are the ones being recognized, but not maybe the ones that reflect some of the new phenomena, we could say. And at the same time, it's really win-win to have this triad of partnership between civil society, academia, and business. And we have heard so much about it today, because the youth organizations can firstly inform young people about various educational and employment opportunities that these bodies offer. They can supply the target group to these stakeholders, but at the same time, they're also kind of watchdogs over the application, especially of reinforced youth guarantee. And I really liked the project, the initiative that Miguel is doing with the Youth Council. I think that's very, very important. And another idea that I had myself when I thought about this multi-level collaboration of stakeholders was, for instance, a place that would bring in marginalized youth in need of skills development. They could be, just after secondary school, for instance. They would work on a real life examples from companies, so some case studies that already happened. And this initiative would be at the same time recognized by the local labor office as an upskilling institution, upskilling opportunity. And I think, now Miguel should answer the question as well.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. I'm afraid I don't have a clear answer, because this is not the kind of work that we do at Barcelona's Youth Council. I mean, we try to develop the associative movement in Barcelona, and we don't directly work with vulnerable or marginalized young people as a place where we concentrate and we make our efforts. But on other programs that we have, we of course work with these people. And at the end, the conclusion that we defend, the point that in which we are, is that if we can generate the social relations between young people that are in circumstances that are hard, that are probably putting them at risk of poverty, such as associate them that young people, will of course will help them for two reasons. One, we'll give them a lot of skills that I talked about before, and second, we will give them a net where they can rely, where they can find some guidance for the future. And in the end, of course, the future will be determined by the position on the labor market. So what we try to do, or what we try to tell to the different governments that we have as a reference, is that they have to put the efforts, and with us, with the people that work on the young people on the different districts of Barcelona, to generate more community, to generate the spaces in which these young people can find themselves, can find other relations, and in the end have a better society, and to promote the virtuosity. I don't know how I was going to say a word in Spanish, but the elements that will ensure the strength of the society.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Very interesting, and to hear directly from young people and how they're working on this and what are the needs in the labor market is indeed very interesting. And thank you all three for this little subsection. We just have a little bit of 5 minutes, and one of the questions that we had in the chat, and I would like to have all the speakers here now and address you all. One of the questions that we have received is, so we have identified a lot of things, a lot of skills that needed for tomorrow. What is the role of stakeholder cooperation? What the young people bring to the table? The benefits of company initiatives, of youth networks, etc. So now, taking the post-pandemic recovery into account and the trends that we are facing now post the pandemic, what should young people do with their first job? So straight out of the labor market, straight out of the education or not? Should a young person try to do a part-time job, try to look at the Standby Youth Initiative and identify potential companies who have traineeship programs? Should a young person go to 42 Madrid? What should a young person do now? Do you have any volunteers that could answer this for me right now? Then
I would volunteer then.
Raquel, please go ahead.
No, I would say after everything that we've been hearing today, probably what the person has to do is just, first of all, sit and think what the goals it's gonna or has in their private life. All these young people we've been hearing have been very clear about how not only the vocational studies, but the passion you have for the projects you are doing. It's something that helps you, and it's something that it's gonna take you eventually to have these skills and so on. But then I would say, look for the information, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of things. Young people who is trying to work as volunteer, who is associated, who is developing projects. There is probably a lot of information in your city, in the administrations you have close, with programs. Sometimes work together with these associations. For instance, in Barcelona, we have a lot of work that we do with the council that Miguel belongs to, and we try to work together with them. I'm sure that happens in a lot of places. So start looking around, be very proactive. Sometimes we do have problems communicating what we are doing and reaching the young people. But there is also a lack of proactivity sometimes in searching for this information. And then be brave and understand that I won't say the sky is your limit, but probably you have a lot of more opportunities than the one you know. And from that, try to make your own path and see which are the parts that you have to put inside your backpack to reach your goals. And if there's nothing there for you, or you can find it, then just ask for help, because I'm sure there's a lot of people around that can help you in this journey.
Thank you, Raquel. Asking for help. I think that is also one of the underpinning concepts that we had various speakers identifying here today. Is it whether it's peer-to-peer learning at 42 Madrid, or youth networks, or your mentors of what Gabriel has mentioned on apologies, young people in training, being apprentice and later being integrated into the company. I think indeed we don't need to be afraid of asking for help. Any last 1 minute hot remarks?
Thanks, Marcus. Very quickly, I really learned a lot in the last, especially in the last panel with our colleagues, but listening to the young leaders that were here today, and the experience that Jacqueline and Miguel and Andrea shared it especially. So I think we have a lot to learn as private sector, and I hope we can take the lessons from this conference, from this event, and for that to be like a continuous exercise, and perhaps, as you said, in 1 year, we get back again with some results and some new developments. And one thing I think Andrea, Jacqueline, and Miguel as well, they mentioned, there's one way we can, for young people as well, to look at is to become entrepreneurs as well. I mean, having a job is a great thing as well, but you have the tools and means to become entrepreneurs and be business owners as well. But again, I think it's food for thought for our next sessions as well. Thank you so much.
Food for thought for next session. Thank you, Gabriel. Ines, a very quick remark.
Yeah, just a very fast one. Just think big, always think big, follow your passion, and don't be afraid of technology. Because we sometimes see that the students, young people, think that the technology, the IT profiles are not for them. But don't be afraid, risk a little bit, and think big and follow your path.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you very much. And that concludes our event today and the first day of Oecd Local Skills Week. Thank you very much to all of the panelists, to your interesting remarks, to sharing your experiences. And just a few key takeaways I'd say is that we need to be thinking of the need and diversity of young people, of integrating these needs into the company practice, and then finding and showcasing innovative ways for employers to engage young people. And definitely the two sentences that I will for sure take away today and apply to other conferences and other opportunities where we can discuss these things is that how we open and how Raquel opened the meeting is that the concept of youth is diverse and we need diverse solutions. And also what Andrea mentioned at the end is that how can we shape the future of youth without integrating youth into this shaping, into this decision process. Thank you all very much again, and thank you all to our participants who joined our Oecd Local Skills Week. The event will continue tomorrow where we have more exciting sessions planned. We will start at 2:30 Paris time with a session on the many different ways in which we can use the new data to anticipate local skills needs and support policy actions locally. This will be followed by a session focusing on how to promote inclusion through skills policies. We hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you and good night.